The views and opinions expressed by the host and tonight's guest are not necessarily those of this radio network, its affiliates, or its sponsors. Listener discretion is advised. Now lock your doors, open your minds, and prepare yourself to go
Beyond the Edge.
The supernatural.
The unknown. The unexplained. Paranormal phenomenon. Unearthly beings. Mysterious monsters. We know what's out there watching. Lurking in the shadows. It's all here, waiting to be explored. Tuck the children in bed. Draw the shades. And turn the lights down low. Lock your doors and open your minds. It's time once again to go beyond the edge.
Hello and welcome to episode number 2 of Beyond the Edge Radio, the podcast. We are recording for the month of September, and in this episode, we're going to be talking mountain monsters, what some of your co-hosts and hosts have been up to, and we're going to be highlighting Weird Wisconsin. We'll be taking a look at some cryptids, some serial killers, some haunted locations, some UFO sightings, and other cool stuff involving Wisconsin, mainly because one of our co-hosts, Jay Bachochin, lives in Wisconsin, and he's done a lot of research on hauntings and cryptids as well. So a little bit later on in the episode, we'll be talking about Weird Wisconsin, and we'll also be joined by Shawn and Marianne Donley from Panic D, from Our Haunted Travels, or Our Haunted Journeys, I think it is, and Haunted Spotlight. They'll be joining us to talk about a haunted location that is on the Panic D website. So a lot of great stuff on this episode, and some good news. We got a pretty decent sounding show this week for you. No sound problems like we had with episode 1, keeping our fingers crossed that Skype doesn't crash. But hopefully we'll have a good episode tonight. Want to welcome 2 of our hosts to the show, our other hosts. We usually have 7 guys on the show, 7 guys and gals, but Shawn and Marianne won't be live. Sean Forker won't be live, and Fred, I'm not sure where Fred is. We haven't heard from Fred yet, but let's welcome Marie Samuels and Jay Bachochin. Good evening, Marie. Good evening, Jay. Welcome to BTE Radio, the podcast.
Howdy. Yes, glad to be here.
Well, glad you guys are back for episode number 2. I think we scared everybody away from episode number 1 with that sound chaos that we had, but glad you guys have stuck it out with us tonight. We're going to have a fun discussion. There's really no rhyme or reason to the podcast, just us discussing roundtable forum type style, I guess you call it, us talking about different subjects. And tonight we'll be tackling Weird Wisconsin's, the mountain monsters, and the last couple of episodes in season number 6, which they just launched August 20th. And we'll be talking about what you guys have been up to. So let's get things rolling tonight with what you guys have been up to. Jay, I know you've been pretty busy hitting the woods and doing a lot of things on your own there. What's new in Wisconsin with you, my friend?
Well, the Cubs lost to the Brewers today. No. Hey, I do live in Wisconsin, but I'm a big Chicago fan. So what's been going on here, it's, you guys know everybody has their own day job, but I also do a lot of video editing for videography at night. So it's 2 jobs I'm working, still trying to get out into the woods, but I have gotten out 3 times in the past month and a half. So it's been pretty good on that side of it. But I do have a conference I'm speaking at on September 14th at the Milwaukee Paracon, and I'll be doing a Bigfoot 101 workshop. And then I'll be joining Chad Lewis over at Van Meter, Iowa for the Van Meter Visitor Festival, which I've never been to, but I'm looking forward to it.
Sounds like you've got your plate full, as always.
It's full.
Marie, what's new in Washington State where you reside?
Well, I'm working hard as always. Like Jay said, we've got the normal gig that you got to go to. I'm officially, this is my first day of vacation.
Yeah.
I have 9 days of vacation. It's going to be a staycation for the most part. But we will be staying one night at the Salish up in Snoqualmie at Snoqualmie Falls. It's where they filmed Twin Peaks. Try to go out there once a year and do the Twin Peaks thing and, have a nice luxurious evening in a nice hotel. So we'll be doing it next week. The September episode of Paradivas will air the first Thursday of September. And our guest was Greg Ludwig. And he was he was a guest on Ghost Adventures special, their Halloween special from 2017 when they brought Annabelle the doll into Zach's museum.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So we didn't talk that much about Annabelle. We talked more about Greg and his experiences. They were able to. There was 3 contest winners that went through the museum and investigated the artifacts, and so we talked to him about what he experienced.
Cool. And that episode will air when again?
Thursday evening, 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Should be 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time on the Paranormal UK radio network.
Awesome. And then we can listen to it on podcast on the Paranormal UK radio network. And where else can we hear it?
Podbean, YouTube are the 2 that I know for sure that we're on. I'm not sure if we're on any other formats.
Cool. And you post it on your Facebook page as well.
Oh, yeah, there's the Marie Samuels page and then the Paradivas page.
Awesome. Very cool.
What have you been up to, Eric?
Well, not a lot. I'm back to work again, which is cool. It's nice to actually have an income for a change and get out of the house. I've done a couple investigations. There is a farm in Fayette County, very southern tip of Fayette County, right near the West Virginia border, where the family has all kinds of weird paranormal activity going on their property. They live in an old farmhouse that is haunted and still very active. They hear things walking in and out of the house, up and down the steps. They see shadow figures in the house on a consistent basis. Plus, they have Bigfoot activity on their farm as well. And in the Pennsylvania episode of Finding Bigfoot, the Paranormal Pennsylvania episode, I think it was season 7 or season 8, you can actually see the farm that I'm talking about at the very beginning of that episode. Cliff, Renee, Bobo, and Matt went to that farm thanks to my recommendation to investigate, and they actually had a wood knock while they were on the farm. And the family still has a lot of activity, so I've spent some weekends in the past month or so, maybe 2 months, a weekend or 2 down there investigating. Now, we didn't have anything Bigfoot related happen, but I did see something that was pretty peculiar, and I'm still not sure what it was I saw or what it could have been, because it was a good 400 yards away. But I'll recount the story for you very quickly. We had gathered in the family's garage outside of their farm, outside their house, and we were celebrating several birthdays for the month of August. And oh, by the way, happy birthday, Marie. Wanted to wish you a happy birthday. It's coming up here. And we were celebrating some birthdays from July and August, and I decided to get up and take a breather and walk outside the garage to where the cars are parked and look out over the farm fields, the corn and the hay and soybeans and stuff like that, because that's usually where they have most of their activities, out in the fields and up on the hill. And while I'm looking out in the distance, there's, like I said, it's probably 400 yards away, and I'm seeing these 2 very large, what I thought were trees on the top of a hill. And all of a sudden I see this black thing just appear between the 2 trees, and it's moving around, but it's so far away that I can't tell really what it is. And I didn't have binoculars with me. So I went back to the garage after watching this thing moving around a little bit for a few minutes, and I called the other guys out and I said, hey, can you come confirm that I'm seeing something that's an animate object and not a bush or a tree or something, that this thing is actually moving around? Because from 400 yards, that's pretty far, and it could have been an inanimate object, something stationary, and just my eyes seeming to make it move around. But we had everybody else came out, and Cindy Dragazin, Dave Dragazin's wife, was looking at it, and she said she saw it move too. and it looked almost like it turned from, it was facing me where it was very wide to where it looked like it turned sideways and became very thin or narrow. But again, I couldn't see what it really was, so Jimmy Trick went and got his binoculars and came back to where we were standing and started looking, and he couldn't see anything, and by the time he got back with his binoculars, whatever was there was gone. So we jumped in a couple of Jeeps, and we drove from where we had parked the vehicles and went up through the farm fields, up a hill, all the way up to the top where we found them. And we've actually found these, they were bushes, about 10-foot tall bushes. And we did find some trampled and matted grass where something was moving around up there. So I don't know what exactly it was I saw, but it was much darker in color from the bushes. It was there for a few minutes as I watched it. Cindy saw it as well. And then when Jimmy went to get his binoculars, whatever it was, it disappeared from sight. So that was the only exciting thing we had that evening.
Was that during the day or like
Yes.
twilight or the evening?
It was probably about 5:30, 6 o'clock in the afternoon, maybe 6:30 at the latest, and it was still light outside. So it could have been anything, but it was darker than what a deer would look like at that distance, because we were seeing deer up on the hill, maybe not 400 yards away, but we were seeing them in the cornfield and a little bit higher on the hill, and you could definitely tell they were deer. They had that lighter brown color. This was almost a black figure, whatever it was. But that's the only thing I'd seen. But as we continued to talk with the farm owners, they went on to tell us several strange encounters and stories that they had, including a possible sighting of a Bigfoot by a state police officer that happened in the spring, where they claim, Frank claimed he was watching a state police officer drive up a road that runs parallel to the farm, and as the police officer drove by, he could see that there wasn't any leaves on the trees yet, so it was early spring. He could see the state police car driving away, and it was driving slowly, and all of a sudden he saw this dark brown figure come up an embankment, cross the road behind the state police car, and disappear. And he saw the state police car brake, back up, and was looking like the cop was looking down the ravine where it went to. And the car drove away, the police officer drove away, came back a few minutes later with a second state police car, and they were very slowly patrolling the road up and down as if they were looking for something that either had crossed the road or they had seen something, or I'm not sure exactly what. We weren't able to talk to the state police officers, but that's what he had told us he saw in early spring of this year. So
wow. And it wasn't Walt and his nephew, the Men in Black?
No, it wasn't.
All right, just making sure. But yeah, that does sound like they were scanning for something.
Yeah, and an interesting little side note to that, they had, Frank had bought an Olympus digital recorder, which he left outside, and on his recording he had captured, as he claimed, wood knocks, howls, whistles, and what he called something very similar to the samurai chatter that was recorded by Ron Moorhead on his Sierra Sounds recordings from the 1970s. I have not listened to the recording yet, so I can't verify that, but our good friend David Dragazin has, and he said it's very compelling what Frank has recorded on his farm. So apparently they've still got Bigfoot activity going on there. And in other news, I'll share this real quick before we get into talking more about some other things we have scheduled for tonight. I shared with this report that I got with you guys on the BTE radio message group that we communicate on. And this happened last weekend in Blairsville, Pennsylvania, which is part of the Chestnut Ridge, with the infamous Chestnut Ridge here in western Pennsylvania. A woman wrote to me that they live on property that they're aware has some strange activity. They hear chanting and foreign language coming from the woods from time to time, which they believe is Native Americans haunting the property, because I believe there was a settlement or an encampment there near where they live. And she said usually the horses and the cows don't react whenever they hear those chantings or strange sounds, but something spooked their horses that night, and they watched what appeared to be a very large ball of light come out of the ground and rise up very slowly into the air, and it spooked the horses, and the horses took off running away from where this light was emanating from. It went up into the air and just completely disappeared from sight. And they sent that report to me, which I passed on to Stan Gordon, and Stan and I are hopefully going to get to talk with the witnesses and maybe get a chance to take a look at the property and see if there's anything there.
I'd kind of like to know what the whole ball of light is. Just this past Friday night, the person I went out with just looked over to the left first time out there, and she said, "What's that like ball of white light?" And it was there's no way it could have been through the trees or through a path or anything, and it was there, and then it just disappeared. But it's almost like the one that Mary Marshall saw back in 2016 when I had that sighting, that the dark one. So there's got to be some sort of correlation with these lights.
Yeah, well, they're not the only ones that have seen them. I've seen the lights myself in the forest in several different locations on different occasions, and they've been at the areas where there have been Bigfoot activity reported. So I don't know if there's a correlation there. Of course, the kettle that you're in, which we'll talk about later, there have been the strange lights seen there as well. A lot of Bigfoot investigators are starting to come forward now and share their experiences with the strange lights in the forest. So I don't know if there's a correlation to it. I have no idea. Incidentally, Frank and Kay, who own the farm in Fayette County, have told us of seeing strange balls of light floating around their corn stalks in the pond that is at the bottom of the hill from their house. So maybe there's something there to it. I don't know, but there is some kind of strange correlation between weird lights and the forest. So who knows? But that's what I've been up to, chasing lights and chasing possible Bigfoot activity and seeing things on the hill, and I can't tell what it is. I almost want to quote Matt Moneymaker and say, "There's something on the hill." But
that was a good one. I remember that.
Yeah, episode 1 of Finding Bigfoot.
It was. If again, I've been listening to their podcast every week, and it's pretty cool because they talk about the behind the scenes, and they kind of re-recorded that for because the film guys weren't ready yet, but I guess Moneymaker was screaming that at the top of the hill, and he just went and ran off after it. So they were all mad at him, even the production crew.
I remember that quite well. Renee was mad and Bobo was mad, but that's what Matt does. Matt does what Matt wants to do. So,
Yep.
But the podcast you're talking about is the Cliff and Bobo's Bigfoot and Beyond podcast, which is an excellent podcast. If you're looking for that sort of thing for Bigfoot stuff, I recommend it. But speaking of television shows, the Mountain Monsters are back with season 6. And we talked finally after 2 years of absence. They're back, and they're on the Travel Channel on Wednesday nights at I believe 10 p.m. Eastern, which would make it 7 p.m. your time, Marie?
Yeah, 7.
Yeah.
I don't think they start till 8. I could be wrong.
I know it's 10 p.m. Eastern here, and Jay, I believe it's 9 p.m. Central Time where you're at, right?
He wouldn't know. He doesn't watch them.
That's true. Jay, you still there?
Can you hear me?
There he is. Okay, I thought we lost you for a second there.
Yeah, so did I. That was kind of scary.
Yeah, but
Marie, no, I've seen every episode, Marie. There we go.
My mistake. A mistake.
No, you were thinking about this other one that we haven't mentioned yet. But no, Mountain Monsters is a great show.
Well, I can say this: the guys from the Mountain Monster TV show, the Ames team, were at the 2019 Pennsylvania Bigfoot camping adventure again. 5 of them were there. Trapper didn't make it, but Buck, Jeff, Willie, Wild Bill, and Huckleberry did make it for the trip. They were there the whole weekend. And Jay, you've met them before. They're great.
Yeah, and I was fortunate from the very first event. Trapper was there solo. And it was good because I got to meet him, and then I got to meet the rest of the boys the past 2 events.
Yeah, and
great guys.
They are great guys, and they're a lot of fun. They like to have fun hillbilly style, if you will.
Yep.
Jeff presented me with a quart of blueberry moonshine from his own personal stash, which I don't drink moonshine. I'm not allowed to drink with the medication I'm on. So I gave it to my brother-in-law and sister, who I'm sure they've enjoyed it.
Have you heard from them since?
My brother-in-law and sister, or the guys from...
No, I'm just saying, it's like, here, have this moonshine, bye.
No, I've heard from my brother-in-law and sister. They're doing fine. But I've also
They
heard
go
from,
out yelling in the streets, yeehaw!
No, they haven't done any cow tipping or any crazy stuff like that.
Cow tipping.
But yeah, they're doing fine, and I actually have talked with Jeff, Buck, and Huckleberry recently via messenger or text message, and we keep in touch. And we've talked a little bit about this season 6, which kicked off on August 20th, and Marie and I were talking about it, and we'll discuss a little bit of it tonight. We don't want to give too much away for those who haven't seen the show yet, but season 6 picks up right where season 5 left off. Buck getting in the back of a pickup truck with the skeleton masked guy, and the roller coaster of season 6 was off and running, Marie.
It sure was. And I'm just glad that it's back on. I am truly addicted to this show. And they're pulling out all the stops with this season, I feel. I don't know if you agree with me on that. But
I don't know yet. The first two episodes, I feel the show's gone off the rails. It's so hard to follow from where they left off from season 5, because in season 5 we were promised, the wrap up. What happened out there? What happened to the woman of the woods? What happened to the little girl? What happened to the black wolf? What happened to the raven mocker? The 3 rings? Who was this group that Jeff was, up with? He took up with, and he was part of their team. And we were promised answers, and here we are, the second episode of season 6, and I'm more confused now than I was at the end of season 5.
See, I feel like we got some more answers with these first 2 episodes, even though, we don't know who it is. They're still explaining why they're doing what they're doing, and they're getting them back on the rails, back after cryptids instead of after witches and little girls or the 3 rings or all that madness that was going on the whole last season. We're back to actually monsters.
Well, not in the second episode. They went chasing after the Waya woman, which is supposedly this werewolf.
Yeah, it's not a woman.
I don't know what it is, but now they're bringing in touches of the Blair Witch, and
yes.
I don't want to give too much away for our listeners who haven't seen it. I don't want to spoil it, but
the Blair Witch aspect was all in the whole last season. They had those were practically the exact replicas from the movie The Blair Witch. Those sticks that were hanging in the trees.
Yeah, and they're back in a sense.
In a sense, yes.
And if you saw the Blair Witch, the original Blair Witch movie, with the house that had all the little kids' handprints on the walls, you'll see that again. And there's just a lot of paranormal side to this story as well in this. So it's not fully away from the Dark Woods take on things, but they are looking for some kind of werewolf woman. I don't know what she is.
The Red Shed comes up, and that was a couple seasons back.
Yeah. And see, that's what's so confusing to me, is because instead of taking on one subject at a time and tackling that subject, it's something new comes up, and they completely forget about the last subject they were on.
Yeah.
Like in season 5, they started out with, we're going after Raven Mocker. And then Raven Mocker became the woman of the woods. And then it became the black wolf. Then it became this little girl that was pointing to things, and Jeff was seeing her. Then it became this other rogue team who wasn't the original rogue team that Jeff was with. And then it became this...
Jeff infiltrated the... Yes!
And don't forget this predator-like creature that attacked Huckleberry in the makeshift cabin. They never said what that was. So they kept adding more and more and more to the story, and it got so far off base from the original Ravenmocker Bigfoot story they went after. It was so hard to follow what the heck was going on. And it just made my head spin. And now we're into season 6, and they never really answered questions as to all these different cryptids and women of the woods and Black Wolf, and none of that was really answered. Now they're on to season 6 looking for this Waya woman, which they did kind of get back to the hunt, as they called it. But they never really truly answered stuff from season 5. So my head's spinning. I know it's.
Well, my understanding was if they follow the instructions they were given, all the answers will be.
I don't know.
I don't want to give away too much, for the listeners that haven't seen the episodes yet. But the you know what I'm talking about, right? If they go after the 6, they were told to. Once they get to the 6th, it'll answer everything.
I hope, because
that was I understood. I know
it's so far off the rails to me, but
a lot of people say I wish Huckleberry.
A lot of people say to me, the show's not real. It's not real. And I'm like, yes, I know. And I watch it for the entertainment value because I think it's a lot of fun. And I know the guys personally, and I have a blast with them. And I try to give as much as the benefit of the doubt as I can. But at this point, I'm so lost and so confused. And I'm just watching it for what it is. And that's all I can say.
I'm watching it from a fictional perspective now, but and then that's not to. I'm not trying to say anything bad about them. I love those guys. I think they're great. I want to call them gentlemen because they're great hillbillies. Mm-hmm. Great guys, right? Great dudes. But it's just like you said. It's so convoluted and off the deep end that. Yeah, I'm just watching it like it's a fictional show, and that's actually making it a lot more enjoyable.
That's what I'm trying to watch it for entertainment purposes only. So, Jay, when you start to watch it or try to play catch up with the show, take it with a grain of salt and enjoy it for what it is, if you can follow along with it.
Yeah, you know what? And the thing is, honestly, it's. I remember you were talking about the whole rogue team and everything, but I didn't catch up from that point on, and that was a couple of years ago. So I'll take it with a grain of salt. Good advice.
Yeah, that's how I suggest people that watch the show. And there's a lot of fans. Oh my gosh, I've never been so amazed at the fan base that they have, and I can understand why they have such a fan base because I've saw firsthand how they interact with their fans. They treat everybody like down to earth, like they're one of the gang.
Do you remember in Pennsylvania when we were eating, they would just stop and somebody would recognize them. They would just sit there and talk with them, and they gave everybody the time of day. It was awesome.
Yeah, and it's not just like, hey, take your picture and move on. They talk to people. And one of my fondest memories from the Pennsylvania Bigfoot camping adventure was when that little boy lost his alien stone, and Willie, the trap builder, took that little boy by the hand. He didn't know. He had no idea who this little boy was, but he walked him around the whole entire campground trying to help that little boy find his little alien stone. So that just shows you what kind of guys they are. I mean, they're there for their fans. They are great
guys.
They appreciate their fans, and if you run into them at the bar or at a Walmart or out in public, they're not just going to say, "Oh, I don't have time for you." They'll make the time for people, which I think is very admirable in this, especially this atmosphere of everybody's, most people are for themselves, and I don't have time for you. I'm too big a person or too big a celebrity, but not these guys. These guys are just the salt of the earth, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, actually, I learned a lot from them because there's been people leaving messages on either Instagram, Facebook, or whatever, and I'll reply to each one of them. I mean, I've been getting people from the Down Under, Australia, and Spain of seeing my documentary and just seeking me out. And the thing is, and it's like to reply to each one, just not by like, okay, great, or a smiley face or whatever. Just like the Mountain Monster guys, they I'm just saying they take the time.
Yep. Yeah,
and no, I'm not comparing myself to the Mountain Monster guys.
Oh, you're just as down to earth and salt of the earth as those guys are, Jay. I mean, you're.
Oh, thanks. So are you.
I don't know about that. I shun.
You are.
He's like, get away from me, boy! You bother me.
I know, right? I don't have time.
Marie's calling me again. I don't have time for you, Marie. Leave me alone. I'm kidding. But,
but we're doing a podcast. Yeah. I don't have time for you.
I'm too busy being a celebrity.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. But at any rate, so those who want to check out the Mountain Monster Season 6, it's out right now. Episode 3 will be out this Wednesday with a 10 p.m. Eastern air date, and I think that's 7 West Coast. 9 Central, I think. Don't quote me on it, but if you check Travel Channel listings, you can find Mountain Monsters and check out the show and get caught up on the past episodes and all that good stuff too. So just glad they're back because it gives us something fun to talk about here on the podcast.
Well, and what the hell is going on with them? I mean, they left us on a cliffhanger, and now I mean, not that we got too many answers, but we got some.
Oh, okay, we'll give you that.
and we're only two episodes in, so we'll see how it plays out.
Right. So that's about all really that's going on new with us. Tonight we're going to talk about Weird Wisconsin on the podcast. Today, tonight, wherever you're listening, whenever you're listening. We're going to talk a little bit about some of the cryptids from Wisconsin that Jay has had experience with, and I've had a little taste of being out in Wisconsin. Matter of fact, Jay, it was 2 years ago, Labor Day weekend, when Kathy and I came out to see you guys.
I know. I was just looking at that and some of the pictures, and I'm like, wow, it must be something about Labor Day out here, because not only has it been 2 years since you've been out here, but it was exactly a year ago tonight that somebody contacted me and had a really close encounters of something that just scared the crap out of him. It's a Sasquatch, he said, at about 3 a.m. But we could talk about that later. Yeah,
we'll definitely talk about that. Plus, I want to talk about the new show that you appeared in called In Search of Monsters. We have a celebrity amongst us, Marie.
You gotta get a throne.
Oh, jeez. No. You know what? All I need is a bag of peanuts. That's it. That's all I need.
It's in the mail.
In the mail. Got it. Bigfoot peanuts. Love it.
Peanuts. But we'll talk about that as well. And some of the cryptids you investigated. We'll talk about your DVD and some haunted locations. We'll talk about a couple of serial killers from the Wisconsin area. And I know, Marie, you're a huge fan of serial killers and their methodology and their psyche and why they do what they do, and you're fascinated by it. So we'll talk about one of the more notorious serial killers, and one that was just mentally disturbed. You really can't consider Ed Gein a serial killer because he only killed 2 people.
I'm going up that tree for sure. That is one of my biggest pet peeves, is that people classify Ed Gein as a serial killer. He was not a serial killer.
He could have been if he wasn't caught.
No, well, maybe.
That's how I always perceived it. Like, if they didn't catch him,
he might have.
Yeah.
He was a necrophiliac, that's for sure.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So, but we'll talk.
In a way, that's just in a way. Like I've got some information for you guys on Ed Gein, so we'll get to it.
Very cool. And we'll talk about some haunted locations. And there's a really cool book that I'm going to recommend everybody pick up. This was written by our dear friend Linda Gottfried and Richard Hendricks. We don't know Richard, but Linda is a good friend of ours, Jay and I. And Marie, I believe you've talked to Linda. We've had her on the show on Beyond the Edge Radio several times. She contributed to this book that has been put out there by Mark Moran and Mark Skirman. They're authors of the series Weird U.S., and Linda wrote a good portion of this book called Weird Wisconsin. It's a travel guide to Wisconsin's local legends and best kept secrets. You can find it on Amazon or at your local bookstore. You can order it, or eBay, or you can find it on any internet website that sells books. I'm sure you could find it. But it's packed full of haunted locations, weird locations, famous and infamous celebrities, just weird spots in Wisconsin. And I figured, like I said at the beginning of the episode, since Jay is from Wisconsin and he has some experience in UFOs, investigating UFOs, the paranormal, and cryptids, and being from Wisconsin, it would be a great second episode for us to talk about here in the show. So we're going to go ahead and dive into our first haunted location on the program. And being that they're not with us, they were kind enough to record a segment of the Haunted Spotlight. So we're going to turn things over to Shawn and Marianne Donley from the Haunted Spotlight, and they're going to talk about a very famous haunted theater in Oshkosh. So Shawn and Marianne, take it away.
boy, does it feel good to be back. So tonight on the Haunted Spotlight, we are talking about Panic D number 2085, the Grand Oshkosh. And this is located at 100 High Avenue in Oshkosh, Wisconsin. And yes, it is open to the public. So for the history and paranormal stories, I'm going to turn it on over to Marianne.
Thank you, Shawn. So the Oshkosh Grand Opera House was designed by William Waters and was built in 1883. It has been known as the Grand Opera House, the Granada, the Civic Theater, the Grand Theater, and even the Oshkosh Opera House. Vincent Price, the Marx Brothers, Harry Blackstone, Samuel Clemens as Mark Twain, John Philip Sousa, Harry Houdini, Sarah Bernhardt, the Smother Brothers, Debbie Reynolds, Jeff Daniels, and President William Howard Taft are just a few among those who have performed at the Grand Opera House over the years. The building is a hip-roofed, two-story cream brick building that does not really belong to any architectural style. It has many architectural influences. Exteriorly, the front of the building has been considerably altered. On the front facade, the entryway is 3 doors wide with an ornate iron-railed balcony above. The entire entryway opening has a center-pointed arch. Centered above the top of the main entry arch are 3 semicircular windows. The visible entry facade was brought forward slightly from the main block. The interior, which has been completely redesigned, is decorated in gold, buff, maroon, and olive, and has cherubs muraled in the ceiling. The walls were originally decorated with gold stenciling. The original seats were upholstered with maroon velvet, and William Shakespeare's portrait once adorned the center of the arch of the proscenium. The acoustic quality of the hall is said to rival that of the Mormon Tabernacle, even with all of the remodeling. The original design seating was apparently very well planned out as well. They were reportedly having no bad seats at all in the Grand. The seats were arranged in the traditional opera house style, but the balcony seats were almost on the stage, with the most distant seat being only 76 feet from the stage. Although the official original capacity of the theater was 921 seats, additional chairs were available that could accommodate crowds of more than 1,000 people, and jump seats folded out from the walls and from the ends of the seats, and they could bring the seating capacity to 1,224. After all of the renovations through the years, though, the Grand today has a current seating capacity of just 550. The Grand opened on August 9th of 1883 with a performance of The Bohemian Girl, and the building opened to success. In 1918, the Opera House was purchased by W.G. Maxey and W.D. Cummings. In the late 1920s, Miss Isabel Maxey, widow of Mr. Maxey, took over the theater, and it was closed for several months due to remodeling and redecorating. Improvements included a modern heating and ventilation system, lighting, and plumbing systems. At some time in her tenure, the building became known as the Granada. Then in 1948, Miss Maxey sold the Opera House to Saul Winokur for $40,000. He then changed the name to the Civic Theater, and it reopened as a motion picture house. A new entry and marquee were added on the erected south corner of the building in 1949, and he painted the red exterior bricking. In 1950, Frank Blum and Mary Vedder became the new owners and renamed the building the Grand Theater. In order to achieve the appearance of a modern movie theater, the building's entrance was moved from the center of the facade to the corner of Market Street and High Avenue, and nearly 8 feet of the stage was removed to make room for additional seats. It was given the status of Wisconsin Registered Landmark in 1965. In 1969, F.J. Hauser and L.L. Cook purchased the Grand Theater. They replaced the old coal furnace and the roof. Allegedly, sometime in the 1970s, the Opera House became an X-rated movie theater. In the mid-1970s, William Seaton and Maurice Goldie leased the building from Hauser, and Seaton had the plaster coverings that had covered the original features of the Grand's interior removed. Local citizens then formed a committee titled Save the Grand. The committee was instrumental in fixing up the building and getting it on the National Register of Historic Places, and that became official on January 21st of 1974. In 1980, worried by the neglect and upkeep of the building, 2/3 of the Oshkosh voters voted that the city of Oshkosh should acquire, restore, and engage in the operation of the Grand Opera House itself. On October 4th of 1982, the restoration project began. Debris was removed from the building, and the adjacent property at 106 High Avenue was purchased and connected to the theater to be used for restrooms, a greater lobby area, and a street-level access for the handicapped. The second floor of the additional property provided a meeting room space and a place for administrative offices. It also became the main entrance to the building complex. The interior of the main building was then also rebuilt from the basement up. The newly renovated Opera House had a reopening dedication and open house on September 27th of 1986. The reconstruction costs had totaled $3.5 million. On October 3rd of 1986, the new Grand Opera House had its first performance since the renovation, with a newly staged performance of The Bohemian Girl again, the same play as the original opening performance. The building then operated for the next 3 years as part of the City of Oshkosh's Parks Department as a rental hall. In November of 1989, the Oshkosh Opera House Foundation took over the management of the Grand by leasing the building from the city. They changed the Grand Opera House from merely a rental hall to a combination presenting and rental hall with recurring performances. In early 2009, while adding a fire sprinkler system, structural flaws from the original construction were discovered in the main roof trusses, and the Grand was closed for emergency repairs then on February 27th of 2009. The Opera House Foundation worked with representatives of the City of Oshkosh, assisted by Oshkosh's Landmarks Commission and the Wisconsin State Historical Society for the reconstruction of the structural elements while trying to maintain the decorative and historic features of the building. The price of these repairs for the restoration were estimated at $2 million. The unexpected costs necessitated help from the community again, and a campaign known as Stand with the Grand movement began. Community pledges of monetary support came from businesses, community members, and even children who donated their allowances and lawn mowing money to help raise the funds. With the support of the community, the second restoration of the Grand Opera House began in the fall of 2009. The restorations, the roof truss issue was addressed, the ceilings were replaced, the larger chandelier was repaired, and the new Grand Lounge, suitable for smaller events, was formed. On September 16th of 2010, the Grand was reopened, but not with the Bohemian Girl as in the first two previous openings. This opening featured actor and performer Jeff Daniels. Following this event, the Opera House Foundation provided a week of open house free performances in an effort to thank the community and taxpayers for their support in the restoration. Through the years and multiple renovations, some features of the original building have been lost. Special seating boxes were lost, the original Stars dressing rooms were removed for fire exits, and the stage has been cut back 8 feet. The good news is the acoustics are said to remain what is considered acoustically perfect. The Opera House today hosts nearly 100 performances each year, including national touring artists, educational programs, performances by local performing groups, Oshkosh Symphony Orchestra, performances by high schools, regional arts groups, and independent promoters. Also held there are business meetings and weddings. So is there paranormal activity in the building? Of course there is, or we wouldn't be doing it on the Haunted Spotlight, right? Well, let me tell you about the paranormal entities. First off, there is Percy Keene. He is the most often observed entity or ghost in the Opera House. He was a stage manager there from 1895 until his death in 1967. He is described as wearing a hat and round glasses. He's often seen in the balcony or walking across the stage. There's also a dog that is seen there. Now, it wasn't seen until the renovations happened, and it is believed that the renovations may have brought it. Or it could also be a dog that used to patrol the Opera House as some form of security. The third thing that they tend to have there is an orange mist that simply appears on the stage. I do have a few stories to tell as well. The first one is that in the mid-1970s, a film crew, including students from West Oshkosh, were shooting a movie in the Grand Opera House called Exit Dying. It just happened to be about the owner of a theater who starts experiencing supernatural happenings. One night, the crew spotted an unknown man watching them from the balcony. When witnesses described him, it turned out that he precisely matched that appearance of the late Percy Keene. It is believed that Keene is helping to watch over the theater that he loved and enjoys still watching and viewing the performances. Another story is that during a rehearsal, a phantom dog was spotted. It was so real that the actors on stage were ordered to remove the dog from the stage. But the actors said, "There's no dog on the stage." Now, there is a woman named Michelle who performed there and reported the following. When I was in high school in 1995 to 98, I performed at the Grand Opera House in school musicals for 3 years. During one year, while at rehearsal, me and some other students were in the lower seats while others were in the basement area with our music teacher. About 5 of us saw a man with a dog, both see-through in form. We saw them walk across the stage from left to right. He was wearing a hat, and all of us looked twice at it and then to each other and back at the stage, and they were gone. And silently, but quickly, we all ran to the basement. Now, another girl named Katie has performed paranormal investigations there, and she reported that she was part of a team at the Grand back in 2007. We had been invited by the Grand as part of a radio promotion being done there for Halloween morning. We came in at about 4:30 in the morning and stayed until 9 a.m. when the radio broadcast started. Some investigators thought they saw an unexplained mist in the auditorium at one point, while I experienced what seemed to be extra footsteps echoing behind mine as I descended to the balcony. Among our recordings was that of a dog barking, which matches the stories of the ghost dog being present. I also recorded the voice of what seemed to be a boy in the balcony asking us a question. And one of our investigators also recorded a woman singing when there was nobody there singing in either of the dressing rooms or in the auditorium or balcony. Finally, I have one from Ava, who rented the building for a party. She reported that for most of her life, her family celebrated Christmas there. They rented out the Opera House and celebrate Christmas there each year. We also take a tour. While on the tour, my sister saw the ghost dog. My cousin and his uncle saw a couple of mannequins move on their own. And there's also a reported ghost light. The light is off all the time unless a human mass is near it, and it turns on a lot while no one is in the auditorium. I'm going to turn this back over to you now, Shawn, for the paranormal claims.
Okay, so this location provides us with 10 claims. We have the random orange mist, which appears on the stage, the phantom footsteps throughout the building. A man is seen in a balcony with a hat and round glasses, believed to be Percy Keene. Mannequins have been reported to move on their own. In one of the basement dressing rooms, someone reported very oppressive feelings. In another basement dressing room, a dark shadow figure has been seen. There's also been reports of a light that turns on an auditorium on its own. A woman has been heard singing when nobody is present. And a man has been seen walking across the stage. And of course, there's that phantom dog that several people have reported as well. So at this point, we're going to turn it right back over to Eric, and let's get on with the show.
Thank you, Shawn and Marianne. What an interesting segment of the Haunted Spotlight, and glad those guys are back with us. They always have great locations to talk about. And Jay, are you familiar with this theater they talked about?
You know, I'm not. After hearing it, I want to research it a little bit more now. It sounds very interesting.
I think it was featured on it was either Ghost Hunters or Ghost Adventures. One of them definitely investigated it, and they did capture some evidence of an apparition in the balcony that could have been that Percy Keene.
Okay. Well, where do they get the dog, the paranormal ghost dog? I don't get that.
That was touched on in the episode that I watched too, but I don't remember like how the dog became part of the like lore. It's just seen.
It's just weird.
Right.
Weird, I guess, but nonetheless, an interesting location for the folks in Wisconsin, and it is open to the public, as Shawn said. If you want to check it out, you can. They still have shows that they perform there as well, so they've renovated it several times, and it is open to the public. So go and check it out and see if you can see some of the ghosts yourself. Watch for the ghost in the balcony for sure.
Yeah, there's definitely some different haunted areas just in the southeast Wisconsin, in the Kenosha area. Just a lot of history, you know.
Well, speaking of the Kenosha area, good tie-in, Jay, by the way. There's a famous headless nun that seems to haunt Kemper's Hall in the Kenosha area. Do you know much about that?
Yeah, again, I just know the legend. It's basically a domed observatory. This is where the Kemper Center is, with a sliding panel that opened. The dome was atop of a 5-story spiral staircase. But the legend, and this is the way I heard it, the legend says the dark wooden stairs were the doom of Mother Mary Therese. And this is how she apparently lost her head. But in these archives here, when you're really digging, either they're covering it up or whatnot, but there was never a suicide or a death there. So again, where does this whole thing, originate from?
Well, they have a legend. One of the versions of the legend talks about students pushing her out a window.
Right, there's that one too.
Falling
Yeah,
down the steps or down the stairs. And
I do that to an.
yeah. It just says it pushed her off out of the window after she had fallen down the stairs. But the most common tale is when Mary was a mean taskmistress and she was hated by all the students. So what it says, one night the nun went to the observatory to get some of the books. You heard about that one then?
No, I didn't.
There were a group of girls that were waiting for her, and they pushed her down the stairwell. And she fell, her head was cut off, and came tumbling down and landed.
Jeez.
So, again, you're right, there's so many different versions. But that was Kemper closed down in 1975.
Yeah, the school closed in 75. The buildings are still there, and they made it a county park. They use it for weddings and concerts and stuff like that.
Oh, yeah. In fact, we did some, we shoot videography for weddings, and we had to go there where the photographer was taking pictures at the Kemper. Beautiful area, but they don't let anybody investigate that place.
It says in the book, Weird Wisconsin, in 1996, a paranormal investigator by the name of David Schmickel took photos of the Kemper Center that purportedly show ghostly shadows and images in the west second-story windows of what was formerly known as the Science Hall.
Yeah, but, I mean, again, you're going by the legend. See, I've always said that you know me, I hunt the truth. Do I believe that ghosts exist? I have experienced things in the past that I could only identify with it being the paranormal, with the ghosts, something going through you and getting cold or catching orbs or whatever. But so with this, is it possible I don't know. Again, so many legends, and somebody got a good reflection off the windows, and people want to believe so bad. I don't know. I don't know what to make of it.
Well, from reading from the book, and I'm not sure how accurate this is, but they say they'd never found any records that Mary Therese ever existed.
Correct.
There was no school records.
Right. So
Weird.
again, that's how come I was saying, is there a cover up there? Did it really happen? And there was a cover up because it's easy to say no reply. There was no, Mother Mary Therese here, and just leave it as that. Maybe something did happen in there, and it was a cover up within Kemper.
Yeah. Well,
So you see that they don't allow investigations, so it doesn't sound like they want that kind of attention anyway.
Correct. Right now they've got the beautiful park and beautiful for wedding photography, and they want people to come there, but they really don't exactly. They don't want the attention of this is a haunted area.
Right.
Although they do have a haunted house for Halloween. So if that makes any sense, it's kind of like you go there and get pranked and scared that way, but you can't go in there as a ghost investigator.
Well, I'll share with you this interesting claim that someone made in the book, Weird Wisconsin. And this comes from a woman who claims that she was there. She writes, "My friends and I used to hang out in the back parking lot of the Kemper Center almost every night. But one night in September, there was something different. Around 11:30 p.m., we were all sitting on a friend of mine's car when we heard a sound. It sounded like a scream or a high-pitched cry. When we all looked up the spiral staircase, there was a dark figure rolling down the stairs. Then it was gone. On another night, we were there all walking around the building, and there was an unexplainable shadowy figure crawling around on the grass and up and down the walls of the building. There are a lot of various yells and screams that come from different rooms when you are in the building, very cold chills included. There are a lot of weird things that I have read about, but experience them is even better." So,
Wow.
strange things are afoot in Kenosha's Kemper Hall.
Yeah. Right around the corner from there is the Rhodey Opera House in Kenosha. And we've investigated that place plenty of times. And I'll tell you what, that place is got some weird ass shit. It's got some things that will just scare you.
Tell us about this weird ass shit. We're a podcast, we can say it.
That's true, and actually, I didn't mean for it to come out that way, but it's true because they have this place down in the bowels of the Rhodey, and this place was built in the 1800s, and it was still used as for plays and stuff like that. Just think of an opera house, cathedral type ceilings and balconies, but so old, and they had a tunnel that went from like where the lobby area is all the way underneath, like a tunnel that took you to the back part of the building so that the actors can come and go and leave without being bothered by anybody. It was just weird. And there's this back room called, well, the guy who the maintenance there called it the clutter room. And he said, there's a clutter man here. And I go, what do you mean? And he goes, well, if you leave it the way it is, you don't get bothered. And if you start to clean it up, things happen. And we're like, okay, we did a big investigation there. And we started picking stuff up. Well, sure enough, right behind us, there's three of us there in the creepy creature feature black and white movie of Frankenstein's Castles, how old it was. Right behind you just hear just a man's voice right behind our heads. Yeah. And there was nothing there. And we caught it on recording too. And so, of course, being the man, and I was with my oldest daughter, and a DJ from WLIP in Kenosha, going to do an event thing like that. And she was there. They both were like hiding behind me. So I'm like, it's fine, even though I'm just like, gah! And so we started heading towards these concrete stairs that go to the first level. And so I'm walking up, and Diane and Maddie were walking. They were at the bottom, and we catch this too. Footsteps start coming from the clutter room down the hall. Pop, 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 like getting closer. And man, they move quick. Again, they were behind me in no time, at the top of the stairs. But we had no explanation for it. Again, if I'm hunting the truth and I wanted to try to debunk it, this is a hoax. This is somebody trying to make it. There's no way I don't know how they could have done it. You know, it's real and it's scary and it's still going on. And that's the roadie.
That's the roadie.
Yeah, there's been a woman in white, maybe a actress there from the 1800s or the early 1900s. Then it did burn down. Then they built it again in the early 1900s. So, yeah, crazy stuff.
Well, there's a lot of weird places in Wisconsin, not just haunted locations, haunted buildings, or haunted theaters, but there's also like weird roads. And Gray Road, for example, we'll talk about that in a little bit here, but there's one in particular that stuck out in this book called Weary Road. It's in Evansville, Wisconsin. Are you familiar with Weary Road?
I've heard of it. I haven't really studied it all. Is that with the little people?
No, that's Haunchyville, and we'll talk about Haunchyville in a little bit. But this place is called Weary Road, and it's about a mile south of Evansville, Wisconsin. It's a paved track lined on both sides. It's a narrow road lined on both sides by woods and cornfields, which is typical for a lot of Wisconsin. And it has a lot of overhanging trees that create dark tunnels in places. Something like right out of a horror film, it sounds like. And as far as people can determine, the legends on Weary Road are fairly recent, and there's really no history to say yes or no these legends are true. But apparently there's a guy named Old Man Weary who apparently haunts this road, and they say he resembles that of Freddy Krueger. So people that travel down Weary Road look for him, and some of the accounts from Weary Road are pretty creepy, and I'll share a couple with you here from the book. Witnesses report seeing a phantom train, imps in the trees, strange lights, and a green glow toward the end of the road that is said to be the ghost of Old Man Weary. The story is that he favored entertaining local children, and their parents accused him of being a pedophile, although this was never proven. The parents got together and they burned down his house. Again, Freddy Krueger-ish.
Yeah.
It is said that not only was he innocent, but several children were present when their parents set fire to his house, and they perished in the resulting blaze along with Mr. Weary. The house no longer exists, but out of tradition, visitors park at the space in the trees where Weary's driveway was supposedly was. They report seeing a phantom car, hearing a phantom motorcycle that has followed people on the road, right to that right-hand turn in the driveway before disappearing. And that was submitted by someone to the book.
Yeah.
Another one.
I just GPS this from my location, and I'm exactly 42 minutes away.
Really?
Yeah, I'm gonna go check it out. It's actually just west of Janesville. Well, maybe not. Maybe it's like maybe an hour, but that'd be a nice kind of road trip. I could see the road where it bends too.
Here's another one from the book. I was introduced to Weary Road about 6 years ago, and I haven't been back since. Weary Road is a deserted road that has some seriously strange things going on. The first time I was there at 11 p.m. with 5 other people, we began to walk the road, and we got about 1/4 of the way down. I got the strangest feeling that we were not alone. This fear grew in me to the point of hysteria, and I wanted to leave. The group thought that this might be a good idea, so we turned around. All of a sudden, there was a huge ruckus in the trees, and something unseen flashed past right in front of us. We screamed in fear, then ran, but it was following us. When we got back to our cars, I looked down at my arms, which were now burning, and I noticed I had 5 finger-like scratches down both arms. This alarmed me since I don't remember getting scratched. Then there was the distinct smell of kerosene in the air. We hightailed it out of there. This place scares the hell out of me, and the thing is that there is a true story behind the haunting of Weary Road. It is funny how mad people get from the town when you bring it up. In fact, a boy was killed there on that road a few years back. Adds to the mystery. So maybe there is something
Yeah.
to this whole Freddy Krueger-like story.
I wonder if
I'm going to go check it out. I'm going to go hunt the truth up there. We'll do a live podcast.
that's a
We'll
really
go live.
that idea.
Well, honestly, because again, you're reading it out of a book. This is how I am too, depending on what your interest is, especially when things are obtainable with a drive like that, which isn't, you're not driving for hours. It's like,
On
why
it.
not just go check it out just to see, be out there.
I'll share one last story with you from Weary Road, and this one's pretty interesting too. Weary Road has been an urban legend amongst teenagers for a while now. The first time I heard about Weary Road, I was about 16 or 17 years old, and as the story goes, there was a cruel man who supposedly owned almost all the land in this small town. The town folk called him Old Man Weary. He lived on Weary Road. He had the typical big house with servants and family. The townsfolk hated him with a passion as well as his family, from what I hear. There are two versions of how he died. One is that everyone got together, tied him to his bed, and set the estate on fire. The other version is that he himself had murdered his family and then set the estate on fire with himself in the house. Either way, he died in a fire. Well, what happens on Weary Road is strange. You have to visit it 3 times before you see anything. I know from personal experiences. Strange coincidences happen the first 2 times. Like, for example, you might see a flash of light on the side of the road the first time you visit, and the second time you might hear something on your car. That's just the beginning. What happened to me was that a friend of mine and myself heard the story and decided we wanted to check it out for ourselves. The first time we went, we were driving along the road when out of the blue a giant white owl came flying out of the bushes. We just blew it off as an eerie coincidence and didn't think anything more of it. The second time we went, the car radio became staticky and we thought we heard a group of people bustling around and talking at the same time. Of course, we again thought it was just the radio. The third time made me a believer. We were driving on the road and we decided to park and get out. We got out and walked around the car and thought we heard something in the field. So we decided to leave the car, or we decided to leave because it was getting way too creepy. And as I was getting in the car, I looked in the rearview mirror and saw a man standing behind us. But he was standing a long way back. I said to my friend, "Oh my God, turn around. There's someone behind the car." She turned around as I did, but we didn't see anyone. So of course we thought she thought I was full of it. I thought I was losing my mind. I then turn around to start the car, but I look in the mirror again just in case, and just like before, only closer was this man. I said, "There he is again." She turned around immediately and saw nothing. I said, "Look in the mirror," and she did, and he was directly behind the car. We could see his face and what he looked like. One thing for certain, his face looked like he was extremely upset that we were there, that we were even on the road. And needless to say, I drove out of there and left as fast as we could. As we left, we both saw him on the side of the road. He was smirking at us. I heard other people having experiences out there. We went to Evansville and no one would talk about it. We went to the library to look up past fires and there was no information that we could find. We even asked the old folks and they say they couldn't talk about it because bad things happen when you talk about him. I find this all too eerie that we couldn't find anything about Weary Road and no one will talk about it.
That's super strange.
Yeah, it is.
So it could be nothing more than just an urban legend if there's no historical information to back up these folks' claims.
As prominent as they described this Weary guy, there would be some sort of record of him if he actually existed.
Yeah, you would think. There would be some kind of corroboration to the story of him either being a pedophile or wrongly accused or them burning down his house or records of fires, and there's nothing. So,
but see, I'm a tinfoil hat wearer. I'm always about conspiracy. Like, it did happen, but it was all covered up. I mean, who knows?
It's definitely worth checking out, Jay, since you're only an hour away. You'll have to go out there and check it out and report back to us.
I will. I'll be right back.
50 minutes.
It'd be cool. I don't have to work tomorrow. I could go out there right now, be out there in an hour, and then just keep going with the podcast. But no, let's just keep going here.
And Marie and I will just talk amongst ourselves. And
yeah, right.
And that'll be the last we hear of you.
Yep. Poor Jay.
Poor Jay. He was here, but now he's gone.
We really would be trying to find Jay.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Hey, that's a good lead-in, but we don't have to talk about that now.
We'll get to finding Jay in a little bit. There's one other really weird place that may be more of an urban legend than actually a real location, but it's written about in the book, and it makes you wonder because there are people that claim they've been to this location, and there are people that actually live where this location supposedly is, and they've actually had to call the police and have no trespassing signs set up and people chased out of there. It's the story of a town called Haunchyville. Have you ever heard of it?
Nope.
Is there a yellow brick road by it by any chance?
There could be, because it involves supposedly a village of little people. And they've been referred to as anywhere in size from General Tom Thumb in B.T. Barnum's Circus to the Munchkins in Oz to Mini-Me in the Austin Power movies.
Wow.
Yeah, that's what the book refers to them as. But they really don't give a specific location other than it's southeastern Waukesha County, and it ranges anywhere into Milwaukee County through Franklin, St. Francis, into Grant Park south of Milwaukee. So if that's the case...
Hey, you know where Grant Park is? That's exactly where my areas of our research is out there, that you've been out there too, Eric.
Okay.
So just letting you know, that's when you said that last one. I don't want to give away anything.
Well, if that's the case, that's one large area for a bunch of little people to inhabit.
But here's the weird thing. I've actually heard... This is bizarre, because why don't you start with what it's all about, and then I'll throw in my 2 cents of what I've heard.
Well, according to the book, and I'm not going to get into too much detail because there's a lot of anecdotal stories that go along with this and people's supposed encounters with this place, but it's supposedly what it was a retirement village for little people to move to after they were done working in the circus or on stage or vaudeville or whatever they were doing. They moved to this little village, and it
really was a little village, wasn't it?
Supposedly. And they raised crops and animals and stuff like that. Like it was a farm almost, but it was a village for little people, and it was supposedly protected by one full-grown adult who carried around a shotgun to keep people off the property from bothering and harassing the little people who just tried to live there in peace. And there's a lot of urban legend stories about this place called Haunchyville that people talk about going there. It's almost like Children of the Corn, if you will, or stuff along those lines, you know, where people don't want to go there because they've heard the story. Almost something like you see out of an X-Files episode.
Right.
The village isn't a modern village by today's standards. It's like they live out of time. It's colonial style or Amish style living, if you will, and it's inhabited by little people. So, Jay, you going to make a trip out there and try to find the village?
You know what? I'm actually kind of looking this one up a little bit, because I hear about these, but I don't look up every urban legend out there. And I don't know. They revolted against the ringleader, and then they hung him in the woods. Mm-hmm. I don't know if I really want to go check this one out. It's kind of creepy.
Yeah,
but hey, you know what? Creepy's my middle name. I'll go check that one out too.
And there's one person who says the infamous Haunchyville, as the story goes, was always located on some place called Mystic Lane Drive in Muskego, which is about 20 minutes from Milwaukee. And that person had been there himself and didn't see anything, you know, of interest, except there's an area that was a fenced-in, gated farm, and that was it. But there weren't any acclaimed little people living there that he could see. But he said people that live on Mystic Lane Drive have so many gawkers and sightseers and legend trippers that drive out there looking for this little village that they call the police quite frequently to chase people off, because it just becomes annoying. You know, people getting out of their cars, taking pictures, trespassing on private property that has nothing to do with the farm or the village, and it gets to be quite annoying to those people. And I can imagine so.
Oh, yeah, exactly. See, the thing is, I think I heard a lot of these, maybe even through Beyond the Edge in the yesteryear with Chad Lewis on, about some of these different legend trippings out here. Because this does sound familiar, but again, it's one that I wouldn't really pick up, but there have been little, like, tiny people stories in the woods, if that makes any sense. And we're talking 6 to 8 inches short.
That's tiny.
That dude is tiny, and
Or
what's that?
like fairies.
Well, they're larger. But then again, I've never seen a fairy, so I don't know how small they are or how big they are. But the person who reported it to me, and to keep it confidential, said he passed out by a tree, and when he came to, he saw these little people dressed, and I don't mean with a gnome hat or anything, but 6 inches, 7 inches, and they were sitting on a branch, and they were staring at him, and he wasn't fully come to, but he knew he was awake, and as soon as he really made a total good eye contact, he said they disappeared, almost like the Predator. The cloaking. They didn't run away. They just
Faded
disappeared. Yeah, phased out. And I thought, when he first told me that, I'm like, he thought I was going to think he was crazy. But I've heard 2 other stories down in this area that mentioned little 6 to 8 inch little people, and I don't know what to make of it. I think I might do this after the Bigfooting. Might look for tiny foot.
There you go.
I don't know. It's just, but that's even creepier. Imagine just seeing little people just running around your legs.
You have your work cut out for you, Jay.
Yeah, it's like Chucky.
Yeah. But there's interesting little anecdotes about this Haunchyville that people have submitted for the book. One woman claims that it's a little village, as she calls it, and this is her words, it's a town of midgets, and she says the stop signs are only waist high. Another guy says it's like Lord of the Cornfield. He went out there and he found a farmhouse where a man lived in. He was full-sized, and he tried to talk to the guy about this village, but the guy called the cops and ran him out of the area with a rifle. The guy ran him out with a rifle and told him not to come back to the area, stay away from it. Another person said they went out to the Haunchyville area looking for 2 carloads of friends, and they went to where they thought it was, and they ended up going the wrong way. They never saw any midgets, but they ended up getting a big fat trespassing fine of $276. So they kind of warn people to stay away from Haunchyville, even though it sounds pretty creepy. You're going to probably end up in jail or get fined for trespassing. Another person says the little people attack those who trespass with knives.
No, that's more like Chucky.
Yeah, yep. So maybe just an urban legend. There might be some truth to it. I don't know.
The stop signs being short doesn't make sense, because are they driving little cars or are they driving regular sized cars?
If it's a little village, they might be driving little cars.
Tonka cars, or
Right.
plate people set.
They might be driving Priuses.
I mean, maybe.
Yeah, there you go. Wait, Pintos.
Tricycle?
I don't know.
I don't know. This doesn't make sense.
It doesn't. I personally think it's an urban legend, but it's a pretty cool urban legend that people are actually actively going out to see if there's anything to it.
I know.
Which may not be a good idea, because you may end up getting a trespassing fine or getting chased out by somebody with a rifle. But it's an interesting name, Haunchyville.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. Are you familiar with it, Jay? Do you know if it's near you?
That's what I'm saying, is that when I've been looking at it, honestly, I'd say if it was closer, I probably would be more of a local legend that I would hear more. But no, it looks like it's definitely further north. Probably about an hour and a half away.
Weird.
I say you guys should fly here to Wisconsin, Milwaukee Airport, and we go legend tripping.
There you go. And we all get fines for trespassing, looking for midgets. Sorry, that was politically incorrect. Looking for little people.
Looking for fairies, or is that politically incorrect?
No, the fairies. An 8-inch little guy would be a fairy, in my book.
You have a book about men and fairies?
Yes. About 8-inch.
Is that anything like Robin Hood Men in Tights?
Nothing like it at all. No, but if you think about the old Godzilla movies, the little fairies that call Mothra, right?
Yeah.
Yes. Elementals.
They were.
We need to get a hold of Ron Murphy and ask him. He's the local expert on ferries.
Okay. But again, I don't know what they are. They're just, from where I research, there's so many weird things out there. I was going to say the other bad word, but there's a lot of weird things out there.
Yeah.
If you go for the 8-inch tall ones, you have to be careful not to step on them.
Could you imagine trying to clean that stuff off the bottom of your shoes?
I know. And then you have to explain where you got that little shoe from. It's like on your pant leg. It's just hanging there.
Yeah.
And then you look and it's like a little Nike or a little Converse shoe.
Isn't that crazy?
Right.
Now let's turn to one last haunted location. I think you guys will get a kick out of this because this this may have been why they went out of business. As you know, Kmart is no longer in business in many states and many cities around the country. Well, according to Weird Wisconsin, there was actually a haunted Kmart that was located on Route 36 in Burlington, Wisconsin.
Mm-hmm.
And residents were so frightened they had to call police to come and check the store for lurking poltergeist. Are you familiar with this one, Jay?
Yeah, again, I've heard that one. Burlington is literally 10 minutes from my house. Now it's just all paved over, and they got the good Walmarts and all the satellite food stores hanging around there. But I have heard of that. Now, I've never gone to that Kmart, but I did hear about that legend from Mary Sutherland, who did the Sci-Fi Cafe in Burlington. So I kind of knew about it, but I never experienced anything.
Well,
but I have been into the Walmart that's over it now.
That's scary enough with some of the people that go into the Walmart.
Exactly.
It's scarier than a haunted location.
But go ahead.
Talk
See what you're going to say.
Ugh. Anyways, according to the article, it talks about police were called to the location in late March of 2000, and the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel and the Journal-Times in Racine and Walworth counties the week reported the same weird happenings. Late shift employees at the Burlington Kmart were claiming that phones had started ringing for no reason, toys fell off shelves and rolled down the aisles, a clean sandwich grill suddenly began wafting the aroma of sizzling hot dogs in the middle of the night. The police were called. As I said, they brought in dogs to search the store, but no ghosts or intruders were found. No mechanical problems with the phones were discovered either. And the store manager said to his knowledge, no one had ever died in the store, and he didn't remember any other spooky incidents. But those who witnessed the phenomenon remain convinced they had an encounter with some blue light specials from beyond.
How did you read that without laughing, that last line?
That was pretty funny.
That was funny.
But again, what's scarier, a ghost haunting Kmart or seeing some of the people that go to Walmart?
I don't know, but you got to remember, back in the day, they weren't open like Walmarts are 24/7. They were open until 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock, and then you had the maintenance guys or the stacker guys or whatever. Can you imagine hearing hot dogs or something burning or grilling or a toy falling off a shelf for no reason?
Yeah, that's pretty creepy.
I think that would be creepier than running into.
Yeah.
Yep.
But apparently, as you said, this Walmart or this Kmart is no longer there and
right.
Been replaced by a Walmart. So I wonder if they have any weird things going on at the Walmart besides some of the creepy people that come inside the store.
That's what I was wondering.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, not that. I mean, who would really say it's open 24/7? So any of the weirdness that would happen would probably just be blamed on Jack, the maintenance guy, or something, or the stock boy, or who knows?
Right.
But I'll look into that as soon as I get back from Wherry Road.
In Haunchyville.
Yeah, in Haunchyville.
Yeah, Haunchy Town. Moving right along. Let's get into a little bit of UFO talk, shall we?
Yes.
Wisconsin is well known for its UFO sightings. There have been several UFO sightings. I know they have a MUFON chapter there. Jay, you know a little bit about some of the UFO sightings that have taken place in the Wisconsin area.
Well, I've actually had several UFO. I mean, again, when I'm saying UFO, I'm not saying little green men, but it's definitely not like a aircraft that I would normally see in the sky. And all mine always seem to happen in the evening. I've never had a daytime, shiny disc or ball that shoots away or something. That'd be cool. But what we've seen out here is we've seen an orange orb that was maybe, my best guess is about 300, 400 feet off the ground, moving really slow. As a matter of fact, my wife, Katie, she noticed it on the back deck, and she's like, honey, come here. I was in the garage and came out and looked, and as fast as I could try to pull my phone up and record, before it changed direction. I did have it change direction. It almost looked like a Chinese lantern, but it wasn't flickering, and it was a solid reddish orange, and it was moving real slow, and all of a sudden it just changed direction. And honestly, that's when I hopped in my car, and I followed this thing until I lost it over one of the Twin Lakes. And I made a report with MUFON, and they got back to me and everything. And they said, you wouldn't believe on how many reports, not just in this area, but in this whole lower southeast part of Wisconsin, of these orange glowing, they're orangish reddish orbs, and they're not Chinese lanterns, the sky lanterns that people try to trick people. So
Light off for whatever reason, wedding or funeral or Chinese New Year. I think they let them go for Chinese New Year.
Well, and they do, but here's one of the biggest ones that really made me scratch my head, is that it changed direction. So let's say, however, the jet streams above you or whatnot, it wasn't that high above people's houses, so you could get a look at it, and you could tell that it wasn't one of the flickering with the fire or anything, and all of a sudden it just went left and started heading east at the same pace. However, when I got my car and started following it, I could never catch up to it. That was the other weird thing. So either it sped up or something, but I lost track of it.
Now, according to the book, they talked about Wisconsin having so many different sightings, and it's being well known for having different sightings, that 3 towns are battling over the title of UFO capital of Wisconsin. One of them being Elmwood in Pierce County, one of them being Belleville in Dane County, and the other being Dundee in Fond du Lac County. Mm-hmm. And these are some of the reports that have come out of those counties. Like in 1975, a local police officer observed a ball of fire as large as a football field over the town quarry. On the southern edge of Dane County, he also caught saucer fever after a police officer reported an object flashing red and white and blue was seen overhead in January of 1987. And in Dundee on Highway 67 in Fond du Lac County, they officially entered the UFO capital trifecta with the first UFO Days Festival in 1991 with a series of sightings that took place there. And it goes on to talk about so many different sightings that have occurred in those different counties and different towns. And they boast that Dundee's UFO heritage has probably been, most notable resident has been UFO Bob. And UFO Bob is a retired landscape architect, otherwise known as Bob Cooney. And Cooney, 73 years of age, claimed to have undergone repeated alien abductions and said he frequently worked with ETs on various projects, such as preventing the Y2K disaster. He hosts his own Fond du Lac radio show called, you guessed it, UFO Bob. And he was one of the featured guests at the 2004 UFO Days seminars. So they actually have festivals in Dundee in Wisconsin there to celebrate UFOs.
Yep.
That's pretty interesting.
And it is. And one of the big things is people could write about it. They could take pictures about it or even videos. But unless you're there and you see this and you can't at least explain what it is, that's what gets everything more curious. I mean, again, being out in the Kettle Moraine, the southern unit, we have seen things that, that you ever see a satellite in the sky really high up there and it's not blinking, but it's just moving at a steady pace throughout the stars. Right. Did you ever see those?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Now imagine one that was brighter, moved about the same speed, and you're like, is that just a huge, inner, what do you call it, the planetary that spins around the Earth, the International Space Station?
Oh.
I was going to say, yeah. No, not that, the International Space Station.
Right.
But next thing you know, it's going through the lower part of the clouds. So now you know it was in the atmosphere and it wasn't outside the atmosphere. And when you're watching it, all of a sudden it would just go and pick up speed, just boop, gone. And there was like no sound, no blinking lights, nothing. And I've seen this now 3 different times out there. Which now I'm starting to think, is it something around the kettle? I don't know.
The kettle sure is a strange place.
Yeah, for sure.
We'll talk about the kettle here in a few minutes. But, if they've got 3 cities in Wisconsin battling to be the Wisconsin capital of UFO sightings, that tells me that there's a lot of UFOs being sighted in the state of Wisconsin.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't do any research to find out where they fall in the rankings as far as the United States, as far as UFO sightings, but apparently there have been quite a number. And those were just a few examples I read tonight, and I'm sure there's plenty more out there available for people to look into and see, what's going on with the UFO sightings and whatnot.
Oh, yeah.
They do like to take cows. There's lots of cows in Wisconsin, isn't there?
Oh, yeah. Plenty.
They're after the...
Are there cattle mutilations in Wisconsin, Jay? Do you know of?
Oh, with that, sorry. I think I caught a breakup from Murray. Not that I've heard in this general area. There have been some, and this was a while ago, though. This was in the 90s, I think I heard of something, and they were trying to say it was cattle mutilation, which would have been west of Milwaukee. So, but again, not that I've heard a lot of.
It's interesting. Now, I saw something in this book that really kind of made me wince a little bit, but if it could be related to it. They were talking about a UFO that was piloted by a hairy creature, believe it or not. And I'm trying to find out in the book exactly where it is here. Has nothing to do with Bray Road or Bigfoot per se, but some type of hair-covered beast that supposedly flew a UFO and was reportedly seen and landed.
Yeah, Chewbacca?
Maybe.
I mean, who knows? I mean, people have been, saying the whole Bigfoot thing, like you said. Are they extraterrestrial? Everyone's got their different theories on them, but
well, here's the story. I'll read this to you, and this is intriguing, and I don't know if it legitimately happened, but consider the time, 74, and Pennsylvania had a lot of weird UFO, Bigfoot-related sightings during that time too, but this gentleman by the name of William L. Bosack was returning home from a Frederick Farmers Co-op exchange meeting on a rapidly cooling night in 1974. It was December 2nd, and as he was driving slower than usual because of the unusual patches of fog on Highway W, some 6 miles east of Frederick, light snow covered on the ground, and it was 10:30 at night. He was less than a mile from home when he received the fright of his life. His headlights illuminated a large, strange disc-shaped contraption sitting amid swirling fog in the westbound lane. And this is his own words as he wrote. It had a curved front of glass, and inside I could see a figure with its arms raised above its head. The figure had a square face with hair sticking straight out from the sides of its head. Its ears were long and narrow and stuck straight out. Its arms were brown and furry, and there was fur or hair on the top part of its body. It looked a good deal like a man, but it had a different looking face than you'd see. It kind of had a cow-looking face. I couldn't tell if the figure was wearing a tight fur suit or had fur itself. I could only see the top half of the body, but the figure appeared to be a little taller than a man. The eyes were very large and protruding, and it seemed to me to be afraid, but it really wasn't nearly as scared as I was. So I was so gol-darned, and he said gol-darned, I was so gol-darned scared, I was afraid to go out at night for the next few days. I'm over the shock now, but I was pretty shook up for a couple of weeks. I wish I had someone with me in the car. When you see something like that and you're all by yourself, you don't know what to do. What would anyone do in that situation like that? But the story goes on to say that in one of those spooky twists of fate, Bozak was found dead in his home at the age of 90 on December 2nd, 1996, exactly 22 years to the day of his strange encounter on that foggy night. And his obit noted, he was a man who was very concerned about the future of this country, and he tried to make a difference. He remained a prolific letter writer to his final days, when he kidded that the President Clinton probably had his name on a crackpot list. So take that for what you will.
You said it. Cow-like face?
That's what he claimed. He said it had a cow-looking face.
See? They're after the cows. So, Jay, you have nothing to worry about. They're just after the cows.
Hey, I like my beef up here in my burgers.
Yeah. Let's move along, shall we?
Ooh, that's a good one.
And we lost.
I was gonna try to be quick and witty with another one, but it's gone.
We just lost our one and only listener after that bad joke.
I know, right?
But let's move on to cryptids, shall we? Since we talked about a hairy-looking thing piloting a space saucer, let's move on to the Beast of Bray Road, and being a very well-known location in Wisconsin, not for just cryptids, but for some of the strange activity that goes on out there. Jay, you are pretty familiar with Bray Road, and you've taken me to Bray Road yourself. And I'll be perfectly honest with our listeners. When I was on Bray Road, I was not very impressed. It's just a farm road with farmhouses scattered out along both sides of the road, little small patches of woods, fields with corn in it or crops. And that's really all it is. It's not scary. It's not dark and foreboding. It's not something you see in a horror movie. It's just like you're driving through farm country. That's
all it is. Okay, well, pretty much from what we've reported, and again, Linda Godfrey is the one who actually named the Beast of Bray Road back in the early 90s, but she is the actual hub for this particular creature. From what was the first reporting that I'm aware of, or at least that I've read of what Linda has found out too, is that it was actually spotted in 1936 on the rural road, which is Bray Road, right outside of Elkhorn. And that's the same Bray Road that I took you to, Eric. They're talking about a 7 to 9 foot tall biped wolf, a human, stands like a human biped, but has a wolf's head. Some say like a German shepherd. There's been some other reports with that too, but there has been so many reports, at least from when Linda started writing doing the reports back in the 90s, and that's when she came out with her first book, The Beast of Bray Road. She actually named it Beast of Bray Road. But I don't think it's just limited to, like you were saying, about driving down that road. If you're going down during the day, I've taken my wife down that. We're like, that looks like, from where we live. It's farm field and roads and little groves of trees. So what's so scary about it? But I don't think I took you there late at night, though, did I?
No, we went out in the evening, late afternoon, early evening, and you showed me where you had seen something at the tree's edge, the forest edge, and we drove a couple of famous spots, but it was in the evening. It wasn't totally dark yet.
Right. And the thing is, just driving down there, if I said, hey, let's go drive down there here now at 1 o'clock in the morning or 2, it has a different feel for it. And I don't know why. I guess it's just the dark, and it's a human, the primate going off of, being nervous about the unknown or whatnot. But this creature has not been spotted on Bray Road alone. It's actually come down as far as Silver Lake, Wisconsin, which is just a couple-minute drive from where I live now. And somebody saw what appeared to be a dog man. They had no idea what a dog man was. I got the first-hand report, an hour after it happened, and she explained exactly what reading about the description about the Beast of Bray Road in Linda's books. Was crouching on the road, and she was driving about 30 miles an hour. She does this same road every day. It was 11 o'clock at night. It's almost a 1-year anniversary because it was October 26th when it happened. And she was driving around the bend, and she saw something really big in the road. And just as she was coming up to it, she kind of got a profile of it, and she says the eyes just illuminated red. Now, that could have been from the headlights. And then another car was coming from the opposite direction. So that she said this thing stood up, and she said she had a minivan, and it was a couple feet taller than the minivan standing up, and just saw the back of it. It was kind of hunched over, really big, broad shoulders tapered down to the thin waist, muscular legs. And then I don't always interrupt people telling me their encounter. So did it run away? She goes, it galloped away. She didn't say it walked away, it ran away. She said it had a gallop to it. And from what she was explaining about the head, she said it looked like it had ears on top of its head. Oh, she said almost like a dog. And again, this person had no idea, not like we are in the cryptid realm where we understand all these things. She's just explaining exactly what she saw. And so, again, from where Bray Road is, it's about 20 minutes north, driving distance. So you're talking about a good, 10 miles north of us, 15. And so I think it's all over this area, at least the dog man.
Yeah, you mentioned, I find this first encounter rather interesting, and I'm going to share it with our listeners from the book. You mentioned the first documented encounter happened in 1936, and
right.
This is a summary of that report. A security watchman was working at a convent in a home for developmentally disabled people in Jefferson County, and he made an unsettling discovery one night as he was patrolling. He saw this thing, and he can only describe it as a thing, digging in an old Native American burial mound behind the main building. And his first thought it was a dog, so he put his flashlight on it, and with a shock he realized it wasn't a dog, but a man-sized, shaggy creature with pointy ears, had 3 long claws on each hand. And later he went on to tell his son that he considered it to be a demon from hell. So that first encounter in itself was pretty terrorizing and traumatizing, but it went on through the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, right. And it finally became famous when the first person had their first sighting, I believe, in 1991.
Right, and you got to think about this because, how many people actually go out and report UFOs, Mothman, Dogman, Bigfoot? Where do you go? Where do you call up and explain it? Because, you're just going to get laughed at because they don't exist, right? So you just wonder on how many sightings have been in that general area for all, for the past century.
For a long time, exactly.
Yeah.
And what I find fascinating is reading through some of these encounters and reports, they all pretty much describe the same exact thing, but it's only in that one particular area during that time frame. So it wasn't seen all over the place. It was just seen in Bray Road and near Bray Road. And then it seemed to move into a different county shortly after that. But I also found fascinating, reading some of these encounters and hearing about some of the descriptions. One woman claimed she saw it on the side of the road where it appeared like it had a dead animal in its claws, but it wasn't eating it like a wolf would eat an animal. It was pulling the animal to its mouth with its hands. Right. That's terrifying.
It is. And the thing is, and it's with that, not to give a shameless plug on each one of those, but being in Seth Breedlove's The Bray Road Beast, as well as the Travel Channel and Search of Monsters, they did some really interesting homework because they went from it just being this wolf-type thing to maybe it's protecting cemeteries because these things have been all around. There's been a few that have been right around a cemetery, which is very odd. That one here in Silver Lake, right down the street, is a cemetery, and she saw this thing. So I don't know.
Yeah, they do put a paranormal slant onto it and say that it might be some kind of paranormal creature or demonic creature. There was even speculation in the Beast of Bray Road, or not the Beast of Bray Road, but the Bray Road Beast.
Yeah.
That Seth put out that there may have been some cult activity where something or someone summoned this creature forward, doing black magic and rituals, and that's why this thing is now running around there. But yeah, you were in the Beast of the Bray Road Beast and In Search of Monsters, the Beast of Bray Road episode, and you actually did an investigation and where you recounted your sighting, and you talked to a farmer who had sightings as well. Can you share a little bit about that?
Yes, actually the barn that we were investigating at was Lee Hampel. I've known him through Linda since 2014, and he actually lives in Wakanda, Illinois, but he has a barn, and he actually made a not a makeshift, but he actually can stay in the barn as a room and sleep and shower and everything like that. And he'll go out there. He's 78 years old, 79, and he started putting roadkill out as bait because the local farmer said, "Hey, have you seen the beast yet?" And he's a retired math school teacher. He's like, "Beast? What are you talking about, beast?" And they explained what it was, and he's like, "Whatever." I don't think he paid too much attention to it until a farmer down the road from him that he talked to, another 80-year-old farmer, second, third generation farmer, said he woke up at 3 a.m. because his animals were going crazy, and he went outside. It was February, so there was snow on the ground, a full moon, or at least a moon that lit everything up. And he went out by the barn. Horses were going crazy, and he looked out in the field, and he saw a coyote being chased by what looked like the biggest, huge wolf, but he says it was bigger than a horse. But it looked like a wolf, but it was bigger than a horse. And it was running just as fast as the coyote. And I don't know if it ever gained up on it. So that made Lee start to get curious about maybe trying to capture this on trail cam. So he started leaving out roadkill. And he did that. He's been doing that for years. But the weird thing is we're never catching it, or he's not catching it on the trail cam. But he is getting the triggers from the trail cam, and then the roadkill or the bait is gone after the third frame. Sometimes there's a mist, sometimes there's a light, but there's never a big, what you would think a Bray Road beast would look like. But however, his bait is missing. It does. That place does not make sense. It's almost like, I think Linda was calling it the Skinwalker Ranch Part 2, because it's just bizarre.
Yeah, it's certainly strange, the sightings that go on out there and some of the paranormal activity related with it. I remember that episode and wondering what exactly was taking that bait. And it should have showed up on the trail camera, but there's nothing there, like you said, except for strange mist. It's weird.
And the thing is, and nobody really, you kind of look at it and just accept that's what it is, right?
That's what it is, I guess.
But nobody's going to tell you what it is. And now there's even more anomalies going on out there that I've been a part of that will just blow you away. And you can only see them in the infrared, not in thermal, not in daylight, but infrared. And you see these type of orbs that have some sort of intelligence. You're well versed in knowledge that dust or bugs or anything outside could cause it to look like an orb. But if it's just sitting there in front of you for a couple seconds and then moves off real slow, it's some very weird stuff. Well,
there's something out there for sure, and it continues to haunt the Bray Road area and Silver Lake area, and I don't know. I've been there. Yeah. You've been there. You continue to investigate. There's strange things afoot in southeastern Wisconsin, that's for sure.
There sure are.
Let's move on to another strange creature. This one's a little further north in Wisconsin. It's known as the hodag. Now, I don't know if the hodag or hodog, how it's pronounced, but I don't know if this thing actually existed, but you said you've had some experience with the hodog itself?
Well, a good picture of underneath their statue of the Hodag. We went up there for a Finding Bigfoot town hall meeting, and it was in Rhinelander, Wisconsin. And as we're driving out there, I've never heard of the Hodag ever. And now I see it all over. But when we were up there, you just saw Hodag High, high school. Mm-hmm. And their jerseys have the Hodag on it. I'm like, what is this all about? And you see big statues out there of it. And you go into a restaurant, and they have menus of the Hodag hot dog and a Hodag hamburger. So the town has really embraced what this is. Now, this is a type of cryptid. Now, this is kind of the official story that they have with Rhinelander. Okay, so I'm just going to read it out so you understand it. It's, and to tell you what it kind of looks like. It says the first person to spot the Hodag, they say, was likely a lumberjack. It was in the 1800s in Rhinelander, Wisconsin. It was a pioneer lumber town, and loggers who worked the North Woods told stories of a monster roaming the forest. Legend had it that this Hodag was a reincarnated spirit of the sturdy, hardworking oxen that dragged logs from the forest. So, back then they're using, the animals to load off drag the logs off. They just think it was a reincarnated spirit of it. If you see what it looks like, just type in HODAG in your search, and you'll come up with what it looks like. It almost looks like a crocodile with a bull head and fangs coming out the front, and you see what it looks like, don't you, Eric?
Yeah, the description they use for it is the head of a frog, the grinning face of a giant elephant, thick short legs set off by huge claws, the back of a dinosaur, and a long tail with spears at the end.
Yeah, well, it looks like an alligator.
It does.
An alligator with this. And it's got the Chestnut cat from Alice in Wonderland smile, the grin.
Yeah.
That's almost what it looks like.
It reminds me of that.
What's that?
But what I found on it, it says in 1893, newspapers reported the discovery of the Hodag in Rhinelander, Wisconsin, and they gave the description, and it was supposedly investigated by well-known Wisconsin land surveyor, timber cruiser, and prankster Eugene Shepard, who rounded up a group of local people to capture the animal. The group reportedly stated that they needed to use dynamite to kill the beast. And later in 1893, a photograph of the remains of the charred beast was released to the media. It was the fiercest, strangest, most frightening monster ever to set razor-sharp claws on the earth. It became extinct after its main food source, all white bulldogs, became scarce in the area. Shepard claimed to have captured another Hodag in 1896, and this one was captured alive according to Shepard's reports. He and several bear wrestlers placed chloroform on the end of a long pole, which they worked into the cave of the creature where it was overcome. He displayed the Hodag at the first Oneida County Fair, where thousands of people came to see the Hodag at the fair or at Shepard's display in a shanty at his house. And having connected it to wires, Shepard would occasionally move the creature, which would typically send already skittish viewers fleeing from the display.
Yeah, but you know what else they blamed the Hodag for up there? All these guys? The golfers in Rhinelander. Mm-hmm. They blame the Hodag for the disappearing golf balls. and the anglers, the fishermen, they claim that the beast will snatch all their trophy catches right off their line. So they're reeling it in, and it's a really big fish, and all of a sudden it gets away. They blame the Hodag.
I believe it.
Yeah, so anyway, so what it is it's the town embracing a legend, I guess, kind of like Elkhorn would with the Beast of Bray Road, But I don't think there's been any deaths or anything like that. They've kind of made it a fun pet creature,
Right, and according to the article I'm reading, the Hodag became the official symbol of Rhinelander, Wisconsin. It's the mascot of the Rhinelander High School. It lends its name to numerous Rhinelander area businesses and organizations, including the annual music festival, the Hodag Country Festival. The city of Rhinelander's website calls Rhinelanders the home of the Hodag. They have that larger-than-life fiberglass sculpture that you talked about of the Hodag out in front of their Chamber of Commerce, and it draws thousands of visitors each year. And of course, the Rylander Ice Arena houses 2 hodags, one a fully bodied creature just inside the entrance, the other one an oversized head that blows smoke and has red eyes that light up, located in the corner of the arena. And he said that was created by the same artist who designed and built the Chamber of Commerce hodag.
Yeah, and it is, like I said, you drive through that town, they've embraced it.
Well, that's great.
It's kind of cool, but, just like I said, T-shirts, menus, high school names, high school mascots, and like you were just saying. So it's kind of cool. They embraced it. I was thinking about moving up there just because of that.
Something that adds to the ambiance of weird Wisconsin for sure.
Yes.
Now, before we wrap up cryptids, there's one last cryptid we want to talk about tonight that you've had a lot of experience with, so much so that you created a documentary film called Finding Jay, and that is the legendary Bigfoot of Wisconsin, particularly the Kettle Moraine, which is in southeastern Wisconsin.
Oh, yeah, yeah. I mean, with this, you got to remember, and I tell people this, and they don't believe me, even though I've been into the weird UFOs and ghosts, I did not believe Bigfoot existed, even up until 2013. And even after we had our first encounter of what sounded like a primate, like a almost simian monkey in the background, and that made me want to look into the subject more, and I could not find an indigenous animal in southeast Wisconsin that would match that. So I kept going out there, and that's when me and my wife found some 17.5-inch by 5.5-inch prints in this deep snow while it was still snowing in the middle of the woods, going across the path, and 53 inches in between each heel to heel. And I counted 12 of them. The 12th one was actually on the top of a fallen oak tree. You could see a heel, but then there was nothing after that. And I really wish I could go back in time, cast, because you can cast in the snow, but I didn't know that back then. I didn't know what I was looking for back then. And I wish I would have taken more video of it, I have enough video and enough photos that I put in the documentary, but it'd be better if I could have casted it, So at this point, trying to hunt the truth or trying to debunk it, I cannot, and nobody can till this day, the way the prints were positioned, the only way it could have been done is if somebody got themselves in a wire from tree to tree and then putting down stencil feet, fake feet, perfectly in a tightrope fashion. And it would, the whole elaborate hoax could have taken hours and hours. Nobody knew we were going out there, and it was snowing that day. So it was snowing more so by the time I got back to the car that those prints, probably just guessing, in an hour or two would have been covered up. They would have been filled up. So whoever hoaxed them, why go through all that? I'm just saying, And that really launched me into investigating out there. And some of the things that have been happening to me out there have been happening to other people across the United States and the world that I can't say that's a coincidence. And that's all in the documentary.
Yeah, there's some interesting things that have happened in the documentary that you've captured and filmed and recorded. You and I have had our own weird experience out there that we have no explanation for, involving eye shine and weird smells. That wasn't either one of us.
No, but hey, you know what though? But the good thing is it just didn't happen with me and you. It happened with me and Chris previous. Not right. It happened in April. We were out in September, and that there was just the icing on the cake of saying, I've been out here so many times, and it happened there and here. And actually, when I went out with Tobias and Emily, we had a real raunchy smell in the same area, not the same spot. And I never try to put that in anybody's head there, but, so if it doesn't smell all the time, first you got to say, does Bigfoot exist? If so, does it have a scent gland? If so, what does it use the scent gland for? Why don't I smell it every time I'm out there? Yeah. When we've had other encounters. Right. So you've been doing this for what, 30 years?
Yeah, a long time.
Yeah, so you're down this rabbit hole already. You're 25 years further down the hole than I am. That's a good thing.
It's definitely unique. It's a unique situation, a unique area, and you definitely have activity going on out there from what I've read and seen and even experienced. And hearing some of the other sightings, it's not just you that have had experiences out there. Linda Godfrey herself has had experiences out there of some kind of large animal that she said she experienced underneath the deck of her house. And other people have witnessed the creature itself. You had a
now, that's actually, believe it or not, you read that in her book?
No, she talked about it on, I can't remember, talked about it recently somewhere.
Yeah, well, that's actually in the documentary because I was there when that happened.
Right, that's where I read. That's where I remember it from. I was going to say I thought I saw it in your documentary, but
yeah,
she had that experience. You talk about in your documentary film about a police officer who had a sighting of a Bigfoot walking down the road in front of his vehicle one night.
Yeah.
And, recently on your Facebook page, you talked to an eyewitness who had a sighting of a creature while out camping with his children. This is just in the past couple of months.
Right.
There are other sightings going on in that area. They're documented sightings. Finding Bigfoot came to Wisconsin and did an episode out there, but they were in the northern part of the state, not in the southern part of the state. But the Kettle Moraine is a very large wooded area, forested area that has something going on there because the reports still seem to come from that area.
Yeah, it's 55,000 square acres, and it actually goes starting in the southern unit goes 150 miles north. So if you look on a map, it doesn't look all that impressive, I would say. But I'm telling you, when you're just that little dot in the woods down here, you'd be lost.
Oh,
that's
sure.
That's how thick it is.
It's very vast and very thick. I can attest to that.
But anyway, so that's actually all in the documentary, and it's free to watch on Amazon Prime, or you could buy or rent it, but it's cheap. And I've also got Blu-rays available on my website.
Yeah, I definitely recommend picking up a copy of it to check it out. Marie, if you haven't seen it yet, check it out on Amazon Prime. It's definitely worth the rent.
I will watch it on my vacation. I have not watched it yet, but now that I have some time off, I'll be able to check it out for sure.
Yeah, you got to.
And you know what, Marie?
What?
I actually put a no. I was going to joke. I shouldn't do that for the listeners. I was going to say I put an Ed Gein poster right in the middle of it just for you in the middle of the documentary. But of course I didn't, and that's a good segue.
We'll be talking about Ed Gein in a few minutes, but I was going to say, Marie, when you do watch it, you get to see not only Jay in the documentary, you get to see me talking about our experience as well. So some familiar faces in the documentary. And Linda's in it as well. You get to see Linda Godfrey talking about her experiences.
Yeah, no, I'm looking forward to watching it. I just, I've been so busy with work. Like I said, now that I'm on vacation, I'll have some time to spend and actually enjoy it.
Yeah. So there's definitely some strange creatures and cryptids running around Wisconsin, and we didn't talk about all of them tonight because there are so many we could talk about. The thunderbirds, the giant snakes that have been seen out there and reported, all types of different creatures that have been reported and seen throughout the state of Wisconsin. We could talk about. We could have a whole show on just the cryptids of Wisconsin. But being that we're talking about weird Wisconsin, we're just touching on a few topics here and there, a few cryptids, a few spirits, a few haunted locations, weird locations. And now we're going to get into a couple of weird individuals. And I think weird is putting it very mildly. We're going to talk about these next two gentlemen that are very infamous, notorious, and probably well known in a lot of circles when it comes to serial killers, murderers. One of the first gentleman we'll talk about tonight, Ed Gein, was the inspiration for several movies, including the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the movie Psycho, and I believe Silence of the Lambs as well. He was inspirations, and he's also been an inspiration. His story's been an inspiration for other horror movies as well, if I'm not mistaken, Marie.
Those three for sure. Definitely were influenced by Ed Gein. Ed Gein, I was going to say, was a unique individual.
That's putting it mildly.
But yeah, more mild weird. think you called him. But Ed Gein. So a lot of people get him confused as a serial killer, and Jay did have a good point that if he didn't get caught, maybe he would qualify as a serial killer. But he only actually killed 2 people, 2 women.
Let me stop you right there real quick and just throw this in there. Isn't there speculation that he killed his brother when they went off to fight a fire at the farm?
There is. So he reported his brother missing and that there was a fire going on, but when authorities came, he took the authorities straight to his brother, who he said was missing, and there were head wounds found on the brother.
So there's speculation that he may have been responsible for his brother.
Responsible.
But they can never prove it.
So Gein had a really unhealthy relationship with his mother, and it was his older brother. His older brother recognized this and would often call out their relationship being, that would be the motive for Ed to kill his older brother, because his older brother was constantly saying, you guys are not interacting the way that you should be. She doesn't talk to me like that. We don't have that kind of relationship going on with you guys. Their father was an alcoholic, died when they were fairly young. And then the brother died, right, in this mysterious fire that happened on the farm. And then shortly after that, Ed Gein's mother died, and that just wrecked his world. His mother was his life. Ed wasn't allowed to make friends. He was actually punished for making friends. So he didn't have a lot of social skills. He was known in town as, a little off, a little weird, but no one thought that he was, they figured he was harmless, right? But after his mother passed away, he basically closed up the entire house except for one room off of the kitchen. So he used the kitchen and his bedroom. The rest of the house was shut down and memorialized for his mother.
Now, didn't he say that his mother's bedroom was left in pristine condition the same way that she left it before she died?
Exactly true, yes. And the majority of the house, in fact, not just her bedroom, but the majority of the house, every room of the house except for the kitchen, the bedroom, his bedroom. So there was other rooms that were left as they were the day she died. So, and I think it's really strange too that you mentioned that the Beast of Bray Road was a protector of cemeteries,
right?
Because now Ed Gein lived in Plainfield, Wisconsin, and I looked on the map, and Plainfield, Wisconsin, is about an hour and a half to 2 hours away from Bray Road.
Okay.
So, a lot of people think that he's a serial killer because of what was found in his house. And what brought police to his house initially, there was the local hardware shop owner, Bernice Warden, went missing.
Right.
And he was the last customer that she had written a receipt for. So they went to his farm looking for information. They found her body in a shed. She had been basically gutted like a deer. She was decapitated and was the corpse hung upside down and gutted like a deer. So they promptly put cuffs on him, went into the house, and it just got worse from there, if you can imagine.
Well, let me ask you a quick question, Marie. He wasn't home at the time they discovered the body. Is that correct?
No, I think he was there.
Because if I recall, they went to the property and didn't find anyone there, and they went into the barn looking for him or her, and that's when they made a discovery of her body in the dark barn.
I don't know. I've got 4 books open to the Ed Gein chapters, and none of them are saying any of that.
Okay, because I'm pretty sure that they found the house abandoned. He wasn't at the house at the time.
Upon searching Gein's property, investigators discovered Warden's decapitated body in a shed, hung upside down by ropes at her wrists with a crossbar at her ankles. The torso was dressed out like that of a deer. She had been shot with a .22 caliber rifle, and mutilations performed after her death. When questioned, Geen told investigators that between 1947, so I don't know if that's true or not, Eric.
Yeah, I didn't think he was at home at the time. I thought he was out, and they came to the farmhouse, didn't find anybody there, and then they started searching the property, and that's when they found her body, and they arrested him later. I could be mistaken, but I thought that's what had happened. But continue on.
So when the police went into the house, upon searching Geen's property, inside the house, they found, and this is a short list, 4 noses, whole human bones and fragments, 9 masks of human skin, bowls made from human skulls, 10 female heads with the top sawed off, human skin covering several chair seats, Mary Hogan's head in a paper bag, and that was one woman that he killed. Bernice Warden's head in a burlap sack. She was the store owner that prompted them to go out to his farm. Mm-hmm. Now, 9 vulvas in a shoebox, skulls on his bedposts, organs in the refrigerator, a pair of lips on a drawstring for a window shade, a belt made from human female nipples, and a lampshade made from the skin of a human face. These artifacts were photographed for the crime lab and they were properly destroyed. When questioned, Geen told investigators that between 1947 and 1952, he had made as many as 40 nocturnal visits to 3 local graveyards to exhume recently buried bodies while he was in a dazed-like state. On about 30 of those visits, he said that he would come out of the daze while in the cemetery, left the grave in good order, and return home empty-handed. But on other occasions, he dug up the graves of recently buried middle-aged women that he thought resembled his mother and took the bodies home, where he tanned their skins to make this paraphernalia. Geen admitted robbing 9 graves, leading investigators to their locations. Because authorities were uncertain as to whether the slight Geen was capable of single-handedly digging up a grave in a single evening, they exhumed 2 of the graves and found them empty, corroborating Geen's confession. So shortly after his mother's death, Geen decided he wanted a sex change and began to create a woman's suit so that he could pretend to be a female. I know. Geen's practice of donning the tan skins of women was described as an insane transvestite ritual. Geen denied having sex with any of the bodies exhumed, explaining that they smelled too bad. So he was not a necrophiliac either. He just liked to wear the skin. During interrogation, Geen also admitted to the shooting of Mary Hogan. So then he went to court. They found that he was not mentally capable to stand trial and was sentenced to a criminal institution for the mentally insane, mentally incompetent. He was then re-examined and found capable to stand trial and was found guilty of murdering one of the 2 women, Mary, I think. Yes. But then spent the rest of his time at the Mendota Mental Health Institute, dying in 1984.
That just leaves me speechless.
When he said that the Beast of Bray Road protected cemeteries because Ed Geen was going to cemeteries and digging up dead bodies.
I don't know.
Isn't that right?
And you like this stuff, Marie?
I'm just intrigued with what makes someone do something like this.
It's called crazy.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, no, it's just not that. It's not that easy. It's not that easy. It's not that simple. I mean, it takes a special kind of someone to do something like this.
He's special, all right. I find interesting is I know the farm burned down.
The night they were going to auction off the farm and all of the belongings, and the night before the auction was scheduled, it was there was an arson. No one was ever found guilty of the arson, but it was burnt to the ground. There was nothing left to sell but the property itself.
Yeah, and that was sold at public auction. And
did you know even his gravestone? Because we did go up there, and you can't find his gravestone because people kept stealing it. Mm-hmm. So he's in an unmarked grave. You kind of know where he's buried.
He's buried next to his mother. So if you can find his mother, he's right next door.
Exactly, but all it looks like is just the ground. There's no headstone.
Not even for the mom?
Oh, for the mom there is, but not for Ed.
It's there though.
Yes.
But yeah, I've heard that they quit replacing the headstone because it got stolen so often.
I stood over that gravestone for 2009 or that area, and all I kept hearing in the wind was Murray.
Yeah, right.
He was the influence for the suspense novel Psycho.
Yep.
And
Silence of the Lambs was. Texas Chainsaw Massacre, wasn't he?
Leatherface, yes.
Yeah.
They even mentioned Rob Zombie's film's House of a Thousand Corpses as being influenced.
Yeah. Ugh. Dude, that's one of my favorite movies of all time.
Face, Buffalo Bill.
I sat through that once, and then I got rid of the DVD. I could not watch that again.
Yeah, it's very it's got kind of a Texas Chainsaw Massacre-ness feel to it, for sure. With the corpses and doing things with corpses.
Right.
He could have been your neighbor, Jay.
I know. You could be living right next door. There could be a new one. Yeah. I don't know.
Oof. Well, let's move on from Ed Gein. Oh, goodness, that makes my head hurt. Ugh.
Yeah.
My heart aches for those poor women. Let's move on from Ed Gein to another infamous serial killer and former resident of Wisconsin. There have been several murderers and infamous people out of Wisconsin over the years, but this is one of the more well-known infamous people. His name is Jeffrey Dahmer, born May 21st, 1960, and died in prison November 28th, 1994. He's known as the Milwaukee Cannibal or the Milwaukee Monster, Marie.
Oh, that reminds me, Ed Gein's nicknames, he was the Butcher of Plainfield or the Plainfield Ghoul is what they called him.
Yep, that's right. He was.
But, and you know what? That does not help anything.
No, it doesn't.
It's still just disturbing.
But Jeffrey Dahmer was a lot different in a lot of ways from Ed Gein, but he was also a lot similar to Ed Gein, where he kept trophies of his victims.
Yes. Yeah, and
what kind of trophies?
We'll get to that.
I know what they are, but go ahead.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
But he was into necrophilia and cannibalism, wasn't he?
Yes, he was. Now, he absolutely was. What his ultimate goal was he wanted to create a zombie. He wanted a living person that didn't that just did what he wanted. He didn't necessarily like. I mean, apparently he did like the dead bodies, but what he really wanted was a living person. The dead bodies don't last, right? And a lot of these people that died at the hands of Jeffrey Dahmer, he was attempting to make them a zombie. And I'm sure you know this is news to anybody. It was
sex slaves.
Yeah. He would use a drill, and drill a hole in their head and pour sulfuric acid in there, or Drano. I mean, he tried a bunch of different chemicals over and over, trying to find the right one that would work. And you know, if he would have just done a little research, I'm terrible, but if he would have just done a little research and just did the frontal lobe instead of the side of the skull, he probably would have succeeded in creating a zombie. A person that didn't talk, didn't, just laid there, but was living, right?
I wouldn't know. If you say so.
Well, because that's how you get back in the day, a lobotomy. And then they just sit there and stare at the wall and drool. Right?
I guess. I I haven't studied lobotomies.
Yeah.
For it.
I don't know. The only lobotomy I saw was in Planet of the Apes, the original movie. But go ahead.
To be honest, I'd rather have a bottle in front of me than a frontal lobotomy. Sorry, that was a bad joke.
No, it's funny. I'm sorry. I shouldn't.
It's a very dark subject. At least we can bring a little light to it.
Exactly. We should, right? Try to a little bit. But yeah, so Dahmer killed 17. He had 17 victims between 1978 and 1991. And the really sad part was one of them actually got away before he was killed. Knew Dahmer was trying to do him in. He was drugged. He had been drugged by Dahmer. Got out on the street. Got in front of a police officer and it was like trying to explain, yo, I need some help, right? And Dahmer came around and was like, oh, he's my boyfriend. He's drunk. I'll just take him home. And the cop said, yeah, he wasn't comfortable with the homosexual aspect of their relationship. Didn't really want to deal with it. So he was like, yeah, you take your boyfriend and take him back. And he let Dahmer take the kid back into his apartment.
Wait, how old was this boy that escaped?
19.
19-year-old young man.
Yep.
Escaped, and Dahmer told the police that he was a boyfriend and he was drunk.
Yeah.
And the police released him to his custody.
Yeah, he said, yeah, and he was naked too.
Wow.
Yeah, and here's the story right here. The cops were called by neighbors after the teenager, a refugee from Laos, ran out of Dahmer's apartment naked, apparently drugged, bleeding from his rectum, and with marks of a power drill on his forehead. Oh, it sounds like he did know about the lobotomies. Dahmer told them that Synthansamphone, that's the guy's name, was his 19-year-old boyfriend, and that they had quarreled. Despite the neighbors' protests, the officers believed Dahmer and returned the boy to him. Within hours, Dahmer strangled him, had oral sex with the corpse, and then dismembered it, recording each stage with Polaroid photographs.
Wow.
And then what's even worse is, if I recall correctly, later on, this gentleman's brother also became a victim of Dahmer.
Oh my gosh.
Yes.
Wow. Yes, here it is. On May 27th, Konarak Synthansamphone, 14, the younger brother of the boy Dahmer had assaulted in 1988, was drugged and had hydrochloric acid injected into his brain before Dahmer left the youth unattended. And as he left the apartment to purchase beer, when he returned, he discovered Synthansamphone naked and disoriented in the street, with 3 distressed young women attempting to assist him.
So the brother was the first victim.
And his younger brother, Konarak, was the boy that escaped and was picked up by the police and returned.
And released back to his custody, yeah.
Yeah.
Isn't that insane?
That's sad.
It really is. And, so Dahmer's like the opposite end of the spectrum compared to Gein. Gein, he was more into the corpses and the skin. He wasn't into killing or cannibalism. Dahmer, on the other hand, he was a sick puppy. He really was into all the worst of the worst.
Yeah, and eventually he was caught in 1991.
Due to the smell coming from his apartment.
Yeah, his neighbors were complaining of the horrid odor coming from his apartment. And finally, police investigated and found the remains of multiple victims, whether they were heads in refrigerators or in vats of acid that he tried to use to decompose the bodies to get rid of them. They found a lot of evidence in his apartment.
Yeah, when the 2 cops hammered on the door of apartment 213, it was opened by an innocent-looking Dahmer dressed in a stylish T-shirt and blue jeans. What they instantly noticed, however, was a nauseous stench. Inside the apartment, along with pornographic pictures and kinky videos, they found hands, heads, and fingers stored in pots. In the fridge was a man's head, along with tenderized strips of meat that were later identified as human flesh. He immediately volunteered the information. Did you throw up? Is he throwing up?
Almost.
He immediately volunteered the information that he had killed 15 young men in Wisconsin and 2 more in Ohio. Over the next few days, scenes of white-coated forensic scientists entering the apartment and leaving with black plastic bags full of human remains became commonplace on American TV.
I remember that.
I do too. I'm sure anybody that saw it did, because it was so, unbelievable that he did that. I mean,
yeah, it was very dark and very just disturbing. Very disturbing. Eventually, he was found guilty and he served time in prison. How long was he in prison for, Marie?
Like a year,
not long,
wasn't it?
A year and a half. Yeah, it's here. He human guinea pig, so that he wanted to save his brain. The self-serving diatribe failed to sway the jury, who returned verdicts of guilty and sane. The judge sentenced him to 1,070 years in jail. His trial began January 30th, 1992. He died November 1994 when he was beaten to death on a visit to the prison gym. But I thought, I'd like to check my other book. They said something about how it wasn't supposed to be in general population because of that, and it was kind of weird how he was ever in a room with another inmate, because they knew that was going to happen, right? Like they just knew.
I'm thinking the guards kind of, flipped the unlock switch on his cell and just said, let him roam around the prison, because they knew that was going to happen to him.
Well, he got what he deserved in the end.
Yeah, I was going to say, kind of deservedly so, right? Like,
yeah, morbid. Oof.
And just gross, disgusting.
Yeah, it certainly was, and that will bring us to the end of Weird Wisconsin for sure. Boy,
how's your Labor Day going, guys?
On a happy note, right?
Let's end on a happy note. We talked tonight about haunted locations, headless nuns, the village of Haunchyville or Haunchytown, where the little people live with little stop signs. We talked about some haunted locations that you investigated. We'd heard about the haunted theater, thanks to Shawn and Marianne Donley from the Haunted Spotlight. Talked about UFOs and UFO Bob being abducted, and talked about the Hodag. I'm sorry I got to say this, but when I hear the word Hodag, I think of hoedown, like a bunch of people in the barn.
Are you going to come to the big Hodag tonight?
Let's go. We're going to Hodag. Wrap your partner round and round. That's what I think of. But
that reminds me, we talked about the mountain monsters too.
We talked about the mountain monsters. Speaking of Hodag, maybe they'll go after him one day. We talked about the Beast of Bray Road and Bigfoot in the Kettle Moraine, and a whole bunch of weird stuff going on in Wisconsin, Jay. And what's surprising, to be perfectly honest, is you don't hear about a lot of this stuff. It doesn't make mainstream paranormal realm or paranormal circles or cryptid circles, the only thing that really I've heard come out of Wisconsin is the Green Bay Packers and cheese. And Jay Bachochin.
We don't talk about them here. Even though I'm from Wisconsin, we don't talk about the Packers.
Because you're a Bears fan.
The Bears fan. And this is going to be their year going to the big dance. You heard it here first.
Well, let's hope. For your sake. Marie, your thoughts on tonight's show?
Well, I've been biting my tongue on that football comment, I'll tell you that right now. I'm just saying.
She's a Seahawks fan.
I know. That's yes. Honestly, you could be whatever fan you want. As long as you're not a Packer fan, you're okay in my book. You are? I thought you were a Seahawks.
Well, I'm a hardcore 12, but over the past 3 years, I've become a Packer fan. I really like Aaron Rodgers. I can't help it.
He can't last forever. Then what are you going to do? You going to jump ship?
I'll follow Aaron. I'm more of a Aaron Rodgers fan than I am a Packers fan.
Okay, I'll give you that.
So that about brings us to the end of tonight's podcast about Weird Wisconsin, talking about ghosts and hauntings, just touching the tip of the iceberg with this, folks, because there's a lot of weird stuff that goes on in Wisconsin, aside from the haunted locations, the haunted, Weary Road, which you're going to check out for us, Jay, and hopefully we'll hear back from you after you get out there.
Definitely.
Haunchyville, the Headless Nun, the UFO sightings, the cryptid creatures, the serial killers, and insane mama wannabes, and I don't know. Just some weird stuff goes on in Wisconsin, that's for sure.
Definitely. And I live here. It's great. You guys should come here.
I've been there.
Yeah. We got to go where the weird is, Eric. We got to go where the weird is.
I was there. I spent a weekend there. Spending a weekend with Jay's family was not weird, but I can tell you from just going out to some of these places, I could see it being a weird place to live.
Yeah, definitely. I thought the Chestnut Ridge was creepy, which it is, believe me. But some of the stuff out here, I have no answer for it. So that's why I keep going out there, though.
That's what you got to do.
Yeah.
And that's what we're going to continue to do here, is look for answers on the show and discuss strange topics and strange people and monsters and places and hauntings and all that fun stuff as we continue on with Beyond the Edge Radio, the podcast. And any last words before we say goodnight, guys?
Hey.
We represent the Haunchyville kids. No.
Okay.
I was going to say, and I know this is going to be shown after, but hopefully you had a great Labor Day weekend. And it was a 3-day weekend, but you have another weekend coming up now. Go check out Finding Jay on Amazon Prime. And then let me know. I just saw I got another bad review. They don't like my family. They couldn't get past the family segment. And that's the first 5 minutes.
They're not from Wisconsin.
They're not from Wisconsin. They don't like me. The haters are going to hate.
Yeah, they do.
But guess what? I'm proud of it. And thanks for bringing up the Travel Channel and these shows and everything. But what I try to put out there is 100% truth. So that's my plug. It's all about the truth. And
don't forget Marie and the Paradivas.
That's right. Our September episode is airing Thursday, the first Thursday of the month, 5 p.m. on the Paranormal UK Radio Network.
And you can find Beyond the Edge Radio, the podcast, on several podcast locations, including iTunes, Podbean, Podomatic, Stitcher Radio, just to name a few. So check us out. All our archives are listed in our website, beyondtheedgeradio.com. A special thank you to the Fork Chop Shawn Forker, who revamped the website, slimmed it down, and made it much more user-friendly. You can find all our archive shows there. You can hear the latest podcast there as well. And keep up the tabs with all of us on Facebook, social media, and all those fun places. So I think that about wraps things up for us, guys. We're going to say farewell until next time. So thanks for tuning in to Beyond the Edge Radio, the podcast, and we'll see you next month.
Good night.
Our time here has ended, but the journey has just begun. Join us again as we attempt to unravel life's most intriguing mysteries and explore the world of the unknown. Visit us on social media at Facebook, on Twitter, and our website at www.beyondtheedgeradio.com. You'll find upcoming guests, future topics, show information, and you can unlock and listen to all of our archived programs in the vault. Contact us with your questions, comments, or feedback at beyondtheedgeradio@gmail.com. The road ahead is long, dark, and mysterious. But you won't be alone. We'll be waiting for you to travel it together, searching for the answers as to what lies beyond the edge.